If I could ask everyone to take their seats, please. Madam Clerk, it's 7 o'clock. We are in Council Chambers Monday, September the 21st, 2015 for a special Council public planning meeting. Councillors' declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, Madam Clerk, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated? Councillor Maracas, thank you. Second, Councillor Kim. Comments or questions on the agenda? All in favor then? Contrary? Carried? And we'll move into the planning applications. I have a statement I read. We turn it over to the clerk and then to the director of planning. Thank you. So we're not usually doing this on a Wednesday night, so I forgot. Welcome to Aurora's public planning meeting. The purpose of this public meeting is to inform the public and obtain input regarding the two proposed zoning bylaw amendment applications and an official plan amendment. No decisions on the applications will be made tonight. For each planning application that will be considered by Council tonight, the following process will occur. Town planning staff will outline the purpose of the planning application being considered. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to make a presentation and address issues raised in the staff report or public concerns which have already been filed. Following these presentations, members of the public will be invited to offer their comments or concerns with respect to the proposal, and then either town staff or the applicant will address those concerns. Once we've heard from members of the public, I will then ask members of Council if they have any comments or questions with respect to the presentation. It should be noted that a comprehensive report will be prepared and presented to a future General Committee meeting assessing the merits of the application before us and providing Council with a recommendation for consideration. It's very important the town receive the correct name and addresses of individuals having an interest in the planning application. Therefore, if you plan to speak at Council at this meeting or want to be notified of further Council or committee meetings concerning the applications being considered, you must complete one of the green interested party forms and give it to our committee secretary at the front, and Samantha's holding one up. Under the Planning Act, the applicant or residents have the right to appeal any decision of Council on a public planning meeting, on a planning application, to the Ontario Municipal Board. But you must verbally express any comments or concerns here tonight, or submit any comments or concerns in writing to the town prior to Council adopting an amendment. The Ontario Municipal Board may dismiss all or part of an appeal in the interest of an application. This public meeting is being audio and video recorded. Your name, address, comments, and any other personal information are being recorded according to the Municipal Act and the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. This will help our clerk prepare accurate minutes and to create a record that is available to the general public, including the town's website. Questions about this collection should be directed to the town clerk, Town of Aurora. I will now ask the deputy clerk to confirm that notification to the public is occurred as required by the Planning Act. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to item 1, this is a second public planning meeting for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment regarding 2419059 Ontario Inc., 497 Wellington Street West, file ZBA 2014-07 and the related file SP-2015-01. Notice was given by mail on September 3rd, 2015 to all interested parties that expressed interest at the first public planning meeting held in February. In regards to item 2, the proposed zoning bylaw amendment regarding Leswell Investments Inc., 1452 Wellington Street East, file ZBA 2015-04, on August 27, 2015, public notification was provided in accordance with the Planning Act by publishing a notice in the Auroran and the Aurora Banner newspapers and by mail to all addressed property owners within a minimum of 120 meters of the subject property, and information signage was posted on the subject lands. And in regards to item 3, an official plan amendment regarding the ancillary uses policy, Aurora 2C Secondary Business Plan Park, notice of public planning meeting was given in accordance with the Planning Act by advertising in the Aurora Banner and the Auroran newspaper on August 25, 2015, and notice was given to each affected landowner by mail.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will now ask the Director of Planning and Development Services to begin with the presentations. Mr. Ramuto.
Certainly. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Item number 1 is a rezoning application for 497 Wellington Street. The application was before public planning, as we've heard back in this past February. Our planner, Jeff Healy, will provide a brief overview of the application, and then the owner and his planning consultant are here, and they have a presentation as well. Their planner, Mr. Dugan. Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Ramuno, and good evening, Mayor, members of council, and the public. So tonight, the first item for you today is 497 Wellington Street West. This is just a brief recap of what was discussed at the prior public planning meeting on February 25th, 2015. So the original application that was before us in February was a rezoning application to rezone the lands from a rural residential RR1 exception zone to a road dwelling R6 exception zone and to major open space exception zone as well to permit 22 townhouse units and a open space block. The applicant has listened to the comments that was provided in the previous public planning meeting and has brought back a revised application for a single attached zoning to an R2 exception zone to permit 15 detached residential units and a 0.25 hectare open space block. Just to refresh everyone's memory, from the last public planning meeting, there was direction from council at the public planning meeting to report back to another public planning meeting tonight. First figure is just an overlay of the site characteristics. The subject lands are identified in red, and you can see Timpson Drive and Dinsmore Terrace just to the east and to the south of the lands. I want to just highlight again the official plan policies that are in place for the lands. The subject lands are primarily designated stable neighborhoods, and a portion of the property is also designated as environmental protection area. As you can see in this chart, this figure, the stable neighborhoods designation is over the majority of the lands, and at the southwest corner of the property is an environmental protection designation. This is the conceptual site plan that was received this past month by the proponent, and this application was for the 15 single detached homes. And to compare from the original site plan application that was submitted in August of 2014, this was the townhouse development that was proposed at the time. And again, staff will undertake a technical review of the subject application, addressing the outlined matters, as well as the comments received from the public and council raised at tonight's public planning meeting, and a comprehensive report with recommendations and options with regards to the revised application will be presented for consideration and direction at a future general committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Mr. Dugan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors.
I'll just remind you, sir, you have about 10 minutes for the presentation.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So good evening. Thanks very much, members of the public as well, for your interest. My name is Johan Kaiser. I'm an account manager and sustainability consultant with RS Homes, the proponent for the project. Jack Dugan is our planning consultant. We also have here the owner, Mr. Ramtin Sodode, and Dennis Rancia, who is our landscape architect. So. Just to introduce our company, the company was founded by Ramtin, and he's an Aurora resident, has been here since 1985 and raised his own family here. Firmly believes in the integrity of the Aurora community, the quality of life that's provided, and is dedicated to maintaining that through this project. He has over 30 years of experience in the industry and really has built his success on top quality design and construction, and a commitment to enhancing property values, not only of the projects that we're building, but the areas surrounding them. We feel it's a very important value to express here tonight because we've heard residents' concerns for this type of development, and want to really emphasize our commitment to working with the residents and to achieve a meaningful resolution to concerns that have been stated. This is a couple of examples of our portfolio and the caliber of work that we bring, so we just feel it's important to state that we really are looking to build quality work here. We're not just in and out to make a quick dollar, but really want to see improvements overall. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It's good to be back. At our last meeting, of course, the community came out and they raised a number of concerns, and we took those concerns very seriously. I've been in this business for nearly 40 years, and in that time, I don't think I've ever seen a developer go as far as this developer has to throw an old plan and to completely replace it with an entirely new concept. Well, no, there we go. So we're starting with a property zoned RR1, rural residential. As you know, as Aurora has grown, the RR1 designation has become less relevant over time, particularly on a busy street like Wellington. And, from our perspective as well, it was necessary to reconsider the zoning bylaw. We did a lot of homework. We did all of the technical studies that are required, and it was quite a significant list. We took the vegetation on site very, very seriously, did an environmental impact study, and looked very closely at what's there and what was of superior quality, what needed to be kept, what we would have to work with and work around. Since that last meeting, we've had meetings at the Aurora Public Library with some of the residents. We've had meetings on site with some of the residents, and this is pictures taken last week on site with the neighbors in the immediately abutting properties. This picture is taken from the extreme southeast corner of the property, and it's looking up into the property, and you can see how big the tree screen is. There's a hill there that's about 8 meters in height, and you can't even see the hill for the trees. Certainly, whatever is built up on the higher land won't be visible from this corner of the property at all. This is a photo taken from the southeast, not the corner of the site, but a little north of there. And it shows the back of one of the residents' yards. And the tree screen. Those trees are on the development site, and that is what she's looking at today. This is taken a little bit further up the hill. Again, you can see a metal shed there. That metal shed is right on the property line, so the property line defines the tree line as well. You can also see the corner of the adjacent house to the east, and there's that house again. What you can also see in this picture is that house that's there is a two-story house with a raised basement. There's basement windows visible above grade, and then the ground floor living areas and the bedroom floor above. And that's exactly what we're proposing as well. You can see the top of the metal shed there, so you can imagine that the houses that we're proposing are going to be a little bit higher, about 2 meters higher than the house in white there. But 2 meters is not going to make any difference when you look at the height of those trees. This is the proposal that we brought to you in February, with townhouses, and with a continuous roof line and a continuous mass. It was just more than the residents were willing to consider, but that was our starting point. A very good quality development, and certainly we've tried to maintain that quality in the new proposal. This is a street elevation of the site as it will look from Wellington Street, and you can see there's stone gate posts, a metal fence, stone piers all along the street frontage. We'll be keeping some of the trees, and in this photo we shrunk the trees so that you could still see the buildings, but in reality the trees that are there are much bigger than that, and we will be supplementing that with additional planting as well. And the houses, again, the houses will be detached houses, pitched roof, and the street elevations will be designed to look like the fronts of buildings, so that they at least nominally face the street as well. So we think we've got a very good elevation from the public side of the project. So going back to the site plan, 15 houses down from 22. It's a 30% reduction. It's I think that's a huge step forward. It breaks up that roof line that I showed you. It breaks up the massing, and to create volumes that, in fact, are actually a little bit smaller than the neighboring houses around this property to the south and to the east. What you may not be able to see in this picture is that there's two house styles. There's an A type and a B type. The A's are along the east side, and on the south side, the B's are on the west side. The difference being that the B's are have double garages, which puts more of the parking, within the development site. Each of those houses will have 4 parking spaces, whereas the others will have 2. So we've got a good amount of parking there. We're hoping that we can also establish some on-street parking, because there is space to park in between some of the driveways and along the ends of some of the houses. And if we can do that, it'll give us a little bit of flexibility to move or even eliminate those 4 parking spaces along the east property line, where we could it gives the opportunity to do more planting along that side of the property. One of the neighbors has suggested that planting within her property might be an acceptable step to take as well. And I think the point there is that with the trees that are being retained, the existing trees along that east property line, that they look like they must be at least 40 feet high. And the new planting in the gaps, I think we can maintain a very, very good buffer in between our property and the neighbors. These are the house plans. They've been completely redrawn from what you saw earlier, and it was a major effort to adapt this project to this new type of housing. These are the two styles, the double garage house is this one.
You're about 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. This is looking along the east property line. That's the house to the east, and you can see how the trees tower over that house. The section shows on the left the proposed houses, the row of existing trees, and then the 2 neighboring properties. And that's drawn to scale. I think a good illustration of how effective that row of trees is. This is the landscape plan, and you can see that we're keeping trees along both the east and west sides of the property, as well as along the street frontage. And of course, everything below the top of bank, that solid green mass at the bottom, is existing trees. They won't be touched. The development site will be completely self-contained drainage, and there will be swales around the outside edges of the development area, and all of the stormwater will be taken into internal drains. And I mention that because we want to emphasize that this property will eliminate nearly all of the drainage that's coming off that hill into our neighbors' yards at the moment. That's it. That's our story. I'll be happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. We'll now open it up to members of the public. You have up to 5 minutes. If you could come up to the microphone, give us your name and your address. And our first person is.
Good evening. I'm Janice Ryan. I live at 19 Dismore Terrace. My property borders on 497 on the south and part of the eastern portion of that lot. Aurora has an official plan to guide the town's development and growth. It was specifically written to ensure that, and I quote, Aurora's growth is well planned and responsibly managed, consistent with the provincial and regional growth plan initiatives. A fundamental principle of the plan is the protection of stable neighborhoods. Once again, I quote, this plan seeks to ensure that the stability and vibrancy of these existing neighborhoods is protected from the negative impacts of potential incompatible development and growth pressures. To accommodate the expected population growth to 2031, The plan directs intensification primarily to the greenfield spaces and the Aurora Promenade. It considers appropriate areas, and it goes so far as to state that the expected intensification in stable neighborhoods would be in the form of secondary suites within homes. I have been advised that Aurora has adequate planning in place to accommodate the revised projected population growth to the year 2041. The official plan does allow for some development in stable neighborhoods. It details criteria to be considered in these cases. Quote, careful consideration shall be given to ensure that the build form of development, and in particular, the frontage and size of any new lots to be created, shall maintain the character of the existing landscape and is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Also, quote, new development and site alteration abutting existing residential development shall be sympathetic to the form and character of the existing development and shall be compatible with regard to building scale and urban design. Compatibility is defined as development which enhances an established community and coexists with existing development without causing any undue adverse impact on the surrounding properties. Multi-density development of 497 could not be done within these parameters. It would result in small lot sizes that are incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The property is bordered by large lots. The existing lots along Wellington from Timpson to Bathurst are all very large, deep lots. The property to the east and west of 497 are 1/3 of an acre and an acre respectively. Multi-density would result in multiple backyards abutting the side yards of the neighbors to the east and west of 497, rather than paralleling them, therefore failing to maintain the character of the streetscape. Multi-density development would result in the loss of privacy, as multiple houses would look over their neighbors' yards, replacing what was a single-family home beside them. This is acerbated by the fact that there is a significant slope to the east and on the southern part of 497. Multi-density development would result in a loss of quiet as multiple families replace one neighbor. It would result in the neighbors' sight lines being changed from vegetation to buildings. A large block of houses would result in blocking wind and light reaching the neighbors. The current plan proposal, for example, shows a block of 5 houses, only 1.2 meters apart from each other. That's less than 4 feet.
You have 1 minute, Ms. Ryan.
Creating what is effectively a wall 10 meters high and 44.4 meters long on top of a hill paralleling the west side of its neighbor to the east. That's a wall 33 feet high and 146 long, blocking the wind from the west and the light and view of sunset. The official guidelines guidelines do not support the rezoning of 497 Wellington Street West to multi-density development, as it would not be compatible with the existing neighborhood and indeed would cause undue adverse impact on the surrounding properties. I ask that the Council deny this rezoning application. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, Council, Mr. Mayor. Doug Bushy for 207 Wellington Street West. First off, I'd like to thank Mr. Dugan for a very well-presented work of fiction tonight, because a lot of the stuff that was presented really doesn't quite hold water to me. If you look at Wellington Street West from Timpson to Bathurst Street, each and every house is set back about 100 feet from the Wellington Street. This development would start very close to the sidewalk, and I know my neighbor's looking forward to coming out of his front door, turning left, and seeing 2.5 houses in front of him, between him and the street in front of him. When I looked at some of the pictures that this development would do, the first thing that struck me was when you look at the houses and the street and the parking area and the sidewalks, it's covering more than 85% of the usable land. A lot of the land that's in this unit, or in this whole parcel, is not part of the buildable area, so it's not part of the net land. The picture that showed their new houses being equal in height and elevation to my neighbor and I really is a work of fiction, because their houses are going to go up at least as high as ours. And when you look at the fact that our land is about 15 to 25 feet lower than the land next to us, they're going to be towering over us. And we're two-story buildings. We don't have loft situations where we've got the third floor being used, where windows are coming out overlooking our backyard, overlooking our bedrooms, overlooking our washrooms. This really impacts the people in this neighborhood. The people behind in Dinsmore, the people along Timpson, my neighbor and I, Mr. Arnold and myself, we're definitely impacted there. This is not compatible with the official plan. If you look at the official plan, the words shall and may are there very often. And wherever the word shall is, you have to follow that. And it says you shall follow compatibility issues. And I urge council just to turn this down right here and now. This is not acceptable. 15 houses is way too much. And when they talk in terms of, we came out with 22 and we're coming all the way down to 15. No, the zoning says 1. In all issues here, you're going from 1 up to 15. That's 15 times what is zoned for now. You can't say, we had 22 approved and we're coming down to 15. That's not the issue at all. We're looking at going from 1. And it has to be compatible with everybody around. And as Janice pointed out, Mr. Locke on one side has a full acre on a very deep lot. Mr. Arnold and myself each have a third of an acre. Every other property that touches this development application is an oversized lot. All we ask is that be taken into account and make sure that you make it compatible with what's there. You can't all of a sudden say, we're going to postage signs, stamp lots. That's not appropriate. So I urge council, do the right thing. Make sure that it's either compatible or not acceptable. This is not compatible. Therefore, I say it's not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bushy. Any other speakers?
Hello, my name is Kyle Ferguson. Thank you for your time this evening. I live at 9 Dinsmore Terrace, Aurora, Ontario, obviously. And I'm just saying, why should these developers be allowed to destroy more animals' natural habitat? No one had the choice to be born, and the animals require their natural habitat for survival. I used to live in Manila, Philippines, and the pollution has become so bad there that if you're standing within a 6-foot distance of a person that you're talking to, you can see a slight haze because of the lack of trees and pollution. If we continue to destroy natural habitat soon, within the century, we're going to have severe pollution problems in Canada as well as throughout the rest of the world. And we are destroying our one and only beautiful planet. This structure being built is intrusive, invasive, and not compatible. Building a 33 by 150 foot structure is going against the town of Aurora and our people's rights to protect the moraine, which we must protect at all costs. This is also not compatible with all of the people that have purchased their homes to have a building built against all of our wills. Nobody wants this to be built. Why should they have the right? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name's Marilee Harris, and I live at 14 Dinsmore Terrace in Aurora, and I have an absolutely stunning backyard, which the the developer and his team, we're very pleased to show all of you tonight. All I want to do is protect what I have, protect what I purchased, and retain what our entire neighborhood reflects, which is wonderful single-family homes, extremely well looked after. We're in a residential area where all of the precedents say that these are large, well looked after, large lot homes, and everybody here and so many of our neighbors that couldn't be here tonight don't see one good reason why we should have this site rezoned. I would like to stress that I think it's a little irrelevant and premature to be talking about home design when I do believe the agenda item is merely and totally an application to rezone. I support Janice, and she went through great detail, and she's become an expert if you ever need any help on the official plan and all of the plans that are drivers for making decisions regarding rezoning. I did this weekend ask Marco to, in fact, give us some information about densification in Aurora. We're hearing that one of the factors that Council may think is relevant is to consider what the Golden Horseshoe Plan and the York Region Plan targets are for increasing density and home build in Aurora. I have not seen, and I would like to know, what are the targets for Aurora? How are we progressing against achieving those targets? It is irresponsible if we're to make a decision using these planning programs as arguments to rezone if we do not know how are we performing against the targets that have been set. Anybody coming off the 404 and driving into Wellington that lives in this community is seeing nothing but development. I think it would be a responsible move on behalf of this council on this topic to publish what the metrics are, publish what your performance is. You have a residential community that is starting to see this council as a group of people that is pro-development. If you are, then that's the reputation you're building. If you are not, and you are in fact operating under guidelines that you think pressure you, then I think it behooves you to communicate very clearly to all of the residents of Aurora what are our targets and how have you been approving in the last 5 years to progress against targets. We have a professional policy analyst that has given us information that says that we are at least on but probably ahead of target. So it's an irrelevant issue relative to my backyard, but I think as a council you need to improve your communication and get these facts out. What I would like to say is it's nice to see many of you as council people again, and Mr. Mayor. It is very nice to see the developer here again tonight. Thank you very much. We've all had a great time getting the burrs out of our socks and getting the mosquito bites mended that we all incurred while we patiently walked through our beautiful backyards, up the hill, went through the forest, and the perspective from the residents around this lot is extremely important, very telling, and to rezone this lot beyond a single site residential home will destroy what we have. Having said that, I know, and we all know, much more now than we did in January when this became a topic. Since then, there's been a great deal of communication, which is a good thing. There's been a great deal of release of information on reports, and we've had numerous opportunities to review them. So we know more. Everybody here is a resident of Aurora, the developer, council, and all of the residents. No one here means any malice. Nobody wants to do anything wrong. We do want to protect what we have. We do want to grow within reasonable pace. There's enough going on right now that you don't need to be doing it in my backyard. And I would like to think that we have a perfect solution. One of the new issues we have before us as a residential group is we actually met our developer who's trying to build a home on the lot behind us.
Excuse me, sir, it's about 1 minute, please.
He's a very nice man. That's a problem. We actually kind of like him now because we've met him. So our solution is that you build a lovely single-family home for your wife, move in behind us, and we can be neighbors. Please respect the fact it's zoned a single-family. We can do some more work together and come up with a compromise that is compatible for everybody. But the fact of the matter is, It's zone single. The official plan protects us. And the residents' concerns, which have not been listed and do need to be made public, has to be the basis on which you make your decision. Keep it as it is, or let us keep working together. And I really would like you to build that house in the backyard. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Anyone else, please?
Make a second comment?
Well, actually, what I would like to do, and then Mr. Bushy, if there's no other comments at this point, I'd like to get some answers from the proponent and from our staff, and then you can come back up again. How's that? So does the applicant, the proponent, have any comments at this point? If not, I'm going to ask Mr. Rumuno to comment on a few things.
There is just one comment that I would like to make. I mentioned in the staff report that the official plan designates this area as a stable neighborhood. And stable neighborhood permits ground-related residential uses. And that's absolutely right. It goes a little bit beyond that, of course. Stable residential neighborhood is a broad category that also permits places of worship and schools and some commercial development. So those are within the realm of possibilities that the policies of the plan address. And I'd submit that when the policies of the plan say it should be compatible with the residential neighborhood, it certainly doesn't mean that it shall be identical with, or you could never approve any of those other forms of development. It's a question of degree, and it's largely where we don't agree with the neighbors who want to interpret compatibility as being identical. And of course, we can't be identical, and we don't feel that it is really appropriate to be absolutely identical. Those houses were built some years ago. The market changes all the time, and we're trying to build for today's market in a way that is most compatible as we can make it with the residents, but certainly not identical.
Thank you.
Can I answer questions?
Well, I'm going to go to Mr. Rumuno to direct some questions to him. Thank you, sir. Mr. Rumuno, do you have any comments? I mean, I'm hearing things mostly conformity to the OP, compatibility, lot coverage, that is density, issues around the Oak Ridges Moraine, and population targets.
Certainly. To you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, because we have heard some comments with respect to what our current official plan states. The lands, as we know, are designated stable neighborhood residential, and our official plan does speak to protecting those neighborhoods. But it also contemplates and specifically states that these areas will evolve over time through redevelopment, provided the development undergoes a proper evaluation through a rezoning application, and that development is compatible and doesn't have an adverse effect on surrounding properties. I'd just like to refer to the actual definition of compatible within the official plan. We heard portions of it from some of the speakers, but definition of compatible refers to development that may not necessarily be the same or similar to the existing buildings in the vicinity, but nonetheless enhances an established community and coexists with existing development without causing any undue adverse impact on surrounding properties. So the official plan does permit all types of ground-related units, single, semis, and townhomes. But again, it is subject to review and consideration by council, and we're in the middle of that process now. With respect to the Oak Ridges Moraine, the area is a good portion of the municipality is within the moraine. This portion of town is within the settlement area of the moraine, which means it's not within the protected area of the Greenbelt or Oak Ridges Moraine. Development is permitted within the settlement area, subject to our official plan and any rezoning application that may be required. With respect to, we've heard some talk about targets for our official plan. What are our population projections in our official plan? As council is aware, we have a new official plan that was adopted by council back in 2010, It identifies an urban structure for the municipality where growth is to occur, and it identifies a population and employment forecast. Our forecasts within the plan currently are that we are to grow to approximately 70,000 persons by the year 2021. My apologies, 2031. It's a 20-year plan. When we went through the exercise in 2010, we were required to conform to the provincial growth plan that was approved by the province in 2006, which established population and employment forecasts, planning horizon, and community building policies. And the direction of the province is to build more compact, efficient communities, and there are provincial policy statements as well in a regional official plan. Just to add, this council is aware, some of the community may not be aware yet, but the province updated its growth plan. There was amendment number 2 to the growth plan in 2013, where they are now projecting out to the year 2041, and the population allocated for the region of York is to grow from 1.5 million to approximately 1.8 million people. And that provincial growth plan, a piece of legislation, requires local municipalities to conform to the growth plan. We need to update our official plans by 2018, and the region is also going through that official plan exercise with respect to redistributing the amount of growth. And they presented, I had a report before council, and the regional chief planner was here, I think in this past May, to present the 3 growth scenarios. And they're planning to report back to the regional council with a preferred or preferred growth scenario by the end of the year. One last point on projections within the official plan or within the provincial growth plan or the regional plan. It's clear that they are minimum targets, and the province identifies them as minimum targets that municipalities are required to meet, minimum densities that municipalities are required to meet in building their new communities, and they can be exceeded.
Thank you, Mr. Muno. Mr. Bushy, please.
Yes, I'd just like to remind Council that when we go to higher density scenarios in Aurora, part of the planning in that regard is to put most of your higher density changes along Yonge Street and Wellington East. That's where our transportation hubs are. We have the GO Transit, the GO buses, the Via Blue Bus. We have the York Region Transit. All of those kind of merge together, and the GO train as well as the GO buses. That's where our transportation is situated to look after higher density residential areas, whether that be high-rise, townhomes, and so on. Wellington West is not like that. We see a blue bus once in a while. That's not slated for higher transit area. So all of the higher density applications that are approved should be along that Yonge corridor and Wellington East out towards the 404. To do so on Wellington West would be a travesty. We're just bringing in more and more cars into that area. It's a bit of a speedway now. And to reiterate some of the things I said before, the setbacks, like you've got to be back from that road to be consistent with the neighborhood. And to overdevelop this would really be a shame, would be a travesty. One other thing I would ask Council is I would request that whenever you do come to vote on this, I would ask for a recorded vote. It'd be nice to know who's taking what position, and I think the citizens of Aurora have a right to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bushy.
Hello. Mr. Maruno, on the topic...
Just a second. We need your name again, please.
It's still Marilee Harris, and I'm at 14 Dinsmore Terrace.
Because we're still
recording. The one
recording.
with the beautiful backyard.
We're still recording.
Okay. Mr. Maruno, you made reference to the targets are minimum, and they are for new development. This is not a new development. This is a lot that is a zoned residential always had a house on it in an established neighborhood. So to call it a new development is misleading, but I'm happy to know there are minimum targets when it is a new development. I still haven't heard what are the numeric targets of how many homes have to be built in Aurora from the period 2010 to 2031, and how many homes have been approved by this council to be built to date against pacing out to 2031. And I think that we are entitled to know that. Secondly, there was a reference made to this proposal or any proposal. This is a public planning meeting. You are elected officials. You represent us. We've spent time with you. We have documented our concerns as a residential group. I have yet to see in any report back from the town, I asked the developer this when we met with him on Monday, what is the consolidated list of all of the concerns that the residents have raised relative to zoning this beyond single family? You have an obligation. You're the ones who received all of the concerns. You are the ones that have to put together, here's the consolidated list. And when you're making your decision, you have to make your decision relative to the concerns that we as the residents have shared with you in detail, and only a decision that respects the concerns we have raised is going to be acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Janice Ryan at 19 Dinsmore Terrace. I did want to comment on something that was said both by Mr. Ramuno and also was printed in the report that Jeff Healy was reading for us. It said that the official plan encourages development in stable family neighborhoods. I read the plan and I see that it makes allowances for it based on numerous rules of compatibility, of not causing adverse effects on its neighbors, the true definition of compatibility that it talks to. The idea that lots less than 30 feet wide, numerous numbers of them, are compatible with neighborhoods that have large single-family homes is not a definition of compatibility. It does create adverse effects on its neighbors. I do hope you take this into consideration when reviewing this zoning. This rezoning asks for multi-density. Multi-density has adverse effects on our stable neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Any other comments from the public on this application? Either Mr. Dugan or Mr. Ramoon, any particular comments on this second round of public comments?
To you, Mr. Mayor, with respect to some of the comments, of course, as I mentioned, the official plan allows stable neighborhoods to evolve over time, subject to rezonings and a proper evaluation. With respect to the performance of the official plan, our official plan does contain, as I mentioned, population and employment forecasts to 2031. They're minimum targets over the past few years. As council is aware, our long-term average is approximately 450 to 500 units a year. As I mentioned, our forecasts, subject to a regional council approval sometime in 2016, will likely change, and this council would be kept apprised of a regional council preferred and recommended growth scenario for the year 2041 for the region.
Thank you, Mr. Ramoon. Mr. Duggan, do you have any comments at this point?
Nothing to add at this time, thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to, I will ask, members of the council if they have any comments with respect to the presentation that's been given us. Councilor Maracas. This is just comments right now to the presentation, or perhaps other comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to ask Mr. Dugan, why 15? Why not 1? Why not 4?
Quite honestly, developer paid a price for the property, he has to make his finances work. You know, he can't do what's impossible for him. Land in Aurora is not cheap.
Thank you. And just to follow up through you, Mr. Chair. You've been in the business for 40 years. I'm just curious, is it common practice to submit plans that don't meet a municipality's official plan or zoning requirements?
We try very, very hard to follow the official plan because that is the policy of council, to guide council in making its decisions with regard to zoning matters. The zoning bylaw is not always up to date with the official plan. It's pretty much up to the developers to initiate changes to the zoning bylaw. So it's a very common practice. You deal with it every month at your meetings. That's very much routine. It's basically the way planning works in Ontario.
Any other members of council with questions with respect to this point? Councillor Kim, Councillor Abel, Councillor Thompson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Dugan, you'd mentioned that you reduced the density by 32%, and I'm just wondering if you can elaborate on that, because going from 22 townhomes to 15 single detached, from an area perspective, it may have decreased maybe the number of families that might be living in a household, but in terms of the actual area that these homes will occupy, it doesn't seem much of a difference, never mind 32%. Can you elaborate, please?
Well, at the meeting in February, if you may recall, concerns that were raised by the community included everything from the number of people on site to the number of vehicles on site to the amount of traffic that it would add to Wellington Street. So there was a lot of talk about the 22 townhouses that we proposed at that time as being too much. So we looked at addressing the specific concerns that were raised, taking out a townhouse here and a townhouse there. We got it down to 19 townhouses, which, a drop of 3 may not sound like very much, but that was addressing specific concerns that were raised. And we discussed that with your planning director, and he said, you got to do better than this. Can you go back and look at a really serious reduction in the numbers? So that's precisely what we did. But the only way to make that work from a developer's perspective is to make the change from attached form of dwelling to a detached form, which does carry a premium in price in the marketplace. So we looked around at what other developers are doing to find some models that we could start with to get an idea of what size are we working with. We have it's a 2-acre lot, but we have the treat area at the back, so we can't use all of the lot. So it does require that we fit things in as carefully as we possibly can, and we spent quite a bit of time doing that. And we looked at other numbers, but 15 seems to work quite well, at least from our perspective, it does. And it's certainly, I think, a very, very significant change from the 22 that we proposed.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, Mr. Dugan, I'm not sure if you're aware, but it was made aware to us by the residents that the original builders of their homes many years ago, they did not properly grade, and hence there is an existing issue with drainage, and sometimes there's a lot of water in their backyards, which some have alleviated themselves. Sometimes some others have had to deal with it still. I think did I hear correctly in your presentation, in this presentation and the prior one back in February or so, that you'll have some kind of drainage solution so that their existing drainage problem will not be an issue, or that is independent of their drainage issue?
We've discussed drainage with our own engineers as well as the Conservation Authority and the town. A normal requirement for every developer in every municipality is that the area that you're developing must be self-contained drainage. So you're not draining over your property line onto your neighbor's property. There are exceptions to that, of course, and when the topography just doesn't permit it, you can't do it. So we've got basically a ravine lot that drains towards Tannery Creek. It's a very steep incline. It's also a heavily wooded area that's part of a much larger woodland around the area. And the Conservation Authority said to us, by all means, keep all of the drainage from above the top of bank on site and take that into the storm sewers, but don't touch the slope itself. So we can, the development part of the site is probably around 75% of the site. We can contain that much of the stormwater, and that contains all of the stormwater that runs off quickly. The stormwater on your roof runs off very, very quickly. The stormwater in your driveway runs off very quickly. We can contain all of that. We can contain it so that it has a slow release into the storm sewer in accordance with your stormwater management requirements. On the undeveloped land, which is the hillside, normally a significant amount of that water will percolate into the soil, and the amount that runs off from undisturbed land like that is less than 25% of the rainfall. So we can eliminate the runoff from about 70 or 75% of the property, and the remaining part of the property has a very low degree of runoff. That we can't stop that. There's going to continue to be some water that is going to flow onto the neighbor's land, but it should be so much less than what they're getting today that I think they should be, quite satisfied, quite pleased with that. It's a very significant reduction.
There seems to be within the property of the new builds that are in the plans, there seems to be a few large sugar maples that are within your property, or the builder's property. Will they be taken down, or will they, because it seems like, judging by where the stakes are, it looks like they may be chopped down, or will they stay in place?
Yes, if you remember the aerial photo that was marked up to show plant communities. Below the top of bank, we've got part of a woodland that extends beyond our property along Tannery Creek. And so that's considered to be a regional asset. And that is something that the Conservation Authority was very concerned that we not touch. Above the top of bank, we have several different conditions. We have, obviously there was a house on the site at some point, and people planted around that house. And what's left of what they planted is there. So we have that big row of Scots pines along the east property line. We have a lot of coniferous trees along the west property line. The middle of the site tends to be deciduous trees. It includes maples and includes other species as well. We will keep the ones on the front of the property that we can, because we feel that how the property is presented to Wellington Street is very important for us as well as for the whole community. But obviously we can't build without taking down trees. And so, yes, there will be trees removed from the center of the site. Basically all of the trees from the center of the site will be removed. We will then have a replacement plan where we'll be putting back new planting, and that's a detail that we haven't gotten to yet, but I'm expecting that the recommendations from the Conservation Authority in the town will be that we replace at a rate of 3 to 1, 3 new trees for every one that we remove. This site is quite restricted, and we won't be able to put that number of trees within the townhouse development. We will be putting new planting along the street. We'll be infilling along the side property lines to intensify the wall of trees along the site. And we may be planting some small whips below the top of bank, where I am expecting that we will be asked to remove invasive species. There's substantial beds of periwinkle and Baltic ivy, and I'm expecting the conservation authorities to say, would you take those out and put a lot of the new trees that you're going to be required to put on the site, in those areas.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. Through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the concerns that I have is that that lot is kind of like a benchmark because, as everyone knows, the lots to the west of the lot in question is 1.5 acre lots, and if you have this much density in this one lot, then it could domino into. There's nothing stopping from zoning changes to happen in the adjacent lots and causing a domino effect, and maybe in a few years from now, Wellington will look quite different.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a question for the proponent.
No, it's not a question. It's just my comment.
Okay, that'd be a good comment to bring up when we put the proposal on the floor.
Okay. Just my one last question through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno. So are you saying through your last response that in terms of the new growth targets and how we measure against those new growth targets, we won't know as a council until sometime in 2016?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did present to this council back in May the 3 draft growth scenarios that the region is working on. We know what the population target is for York Region, 1.8 million. But the region, through their municipal comprehensive review of their official plan, is working with the local municipalities to redistribute that growth to 2041. And they're planning to have a council decision on by the end of this year on a preferred growth option, and then sometime in early 2016, spring of 2016, a preferred growth scenario.
So we will know, essentially you're saying we'll know how we're doing in terms of how many planned residentials we'll know by early spring of 2016.
Mr. Mayor?
To you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. It'll be a question of our population forecast for the year 2041. We're currently at 70,000 for 2031. The growth plan has been amended and extended out to 2041, and the population increase for York Region.
Yes, sir.
So it seems then, from what I've heard, that we can't really use growth targets and our performance or how well we've kept up to that new benchmark until, so we can't use that figure for this decision, I guess. Thank you.
Councillor Abel, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Dugan, one of the first slides you showed was the tree screen, as you called it, and it was a very flat area, and it was up a hill, and you said it was 8 meters up to the flat, like there was a hill?
From the southwest corner, which is the lowest corner of the
Yes.
site, to the top of the bank is as much as 8 meters, yes.
And then we went and talked, I think, a couple of slides later, and you showed a shed.
Yes.
And I failed to understand what you were doing because I've been there. So there's a hill from the property, disregarding the shed for a minute. How is it much the same hill buffer up? Would it be some 8 meters?
No, along the east side, because those properties are not in the ravine, the slope is much less than that. It's probably 2 to 2.5 meters along where that shed is.
Okay. And then the elevations of the townhouses that are proposed, as I see them with the high elevation peaked roofs, they're at least, are they 33 feet? Is that what the maximum is?
That's right.
So, okay, so I just want to get some numbers from you that we can get some sort of agreement on.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. Through you to Mr. Dugan. Mr. Dugan, you presented a number of slides that spoke to compatibility. You identified similar housing types, height, and so forth. But you didn't really speak to density. While you did identify that it was a reduction of density, there was no really, I guess, comparison of what you're proposing from density versus the surrounding neighborhood. So by my calculation, you're proposing essentially 7.5 units per acre. Have you done some comparative to what the density is of the area surrounding you, and if so, how does it compare?
We haven't, but as you know, we haven't looked at the specific densities of specific parts of the surrounding streets. But as you know, single-family homes, Mr. Bushy was talking about his as being a third of an acre lot. Yeah.
That's fine. I just wanted to know whether you've done it or not.
No.
And so I hear you haven't.
No, 4 to 8 units per acre is quite typical.
Thank you very much. I'll hold my comments to our session.
Any other comments from Council? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, through you to Mr. Dugan, I just want to go back to that slide and kind of go a little further about the trees that are along the east and the west side. I'm just wondering, and I know I've asked this before, but what guarantees are there that those trees will be able to be maintained after a development like this?
Our landscape architect is here, and if you don't mind, I'd like to ask him that question because he's much more qualified than I am to answer.
Please.
Sure. Yes, Dennis? This is Dennis Warencia of Insight Landscape Architects.
Mayor, Council, sorry, could you please repeat that?
Well, I'm just wondering what guarantees will be made, and are we 100% or is the developer 100% sure that these trees will be able to be maintained after a development like this goes in? Because I mean, we're all looking at the heights of these new houses, and we're saying that the trees are going to be able to block the sight lines for the existing backyards. So if those trees aren't maintained, if they end up dying, well, then we lose that basically visual effect.
Certainly, when we walked the property with the stakeholders, with the neighbors, we all understood the importance of the vegetated edges, particularly to the east, and we explored various ways of how we would be able to maintain that. Excuse me, in creating buffers or protective zones, and then the long-term longevity of that. Sort of the discussion was that we could infill pockets or look to put a restorative plan in place that would maintain the integrity of the trees moving forward, or certainly maintaining the vegetative edge. In terms of an actual homeowner actually removing those trees once the house was built, I don't know if I could speak to that or not. But
no, and that's fine. That's great. I'm just, I guess I might as well ask you through you, Mr. Chair, as a follow-up. In your experience as a professional landscaper, we're looking at 7.5 meters, I believe, from the back of the existing foundation
yes.
of the house
yes.
to that tree line. In your experience, is that a common thing where you're able to actually maintain those trees? Are those trees able to live? Have you had those occurrences where you've had that kind of a distance from the trees?
Well, what we discussed and what we've proposed is that we would establish a protective zone. So in essence, it's a no-touch zone. So we would establish an edge, trying to determine, say, the trees or the vegetation of value. We might use the drip line or the root zone of the various vegetative swath as it goes through, and then establish that as a no-touch zone, meaning the developer can't come in there and disturb that. And certainly that zone would get wider or thinner depending on the existing vegetation that follows through that, say in particular on the east side. So we feel confident that is viable as an option and is worth pursuing in terms of maintaining.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Perry. For the landscape architect or Mr. Dugan?
I think Mr. Dugan is probably, landscape architect might come back up, but I think Mr. Dugan to start. Is there an opportunity to build the site a little bit lower and utilize those very big hills as a bit of a berm to mitigate the height that the residents would actually see. So instead of building at the top, I found your drawing that showed the dissection of the hill. Is there an opportunity to build it sort of, you have peaks coming up and then you drop it down a meter to build the site a little bit lower? I understand it might cause some water issues, but I think with proper engineering, you could work through that. I know that proper engineering costs money, but is that an opportunity that could be looked at?
In fact, that's a proposal that our landscape architect made to us, and we said let's keep that in mind. We expect that we'll have some difficult negotiations with our own engineers as well as the town's engineers to make it work, but it's something that we definitely want to pursue.
Councillor?
Personally, I think with proper planning, that is probably a good way to go. Mm-hmm. It allows the density, which, as much as I don't like the density, I do understand your position and having followed the Glenway position and the court ruling from that. It was set very strongly that the targets that we have are projections and should be treated as minimums, as Mr. Ramuno has stated. So my comment to you, I would really appreciate it if you were to consider that moving forward, because I think I stood on the property with many of the homeowners and looking at the massing and the scale and scope of those buildings. If I were living there, my biggest concern would be having peering eyes living over me. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it wouldn't be necessarily the intention of the residents to peer, mm-hmm. but they'd be there. So that would be one thing I'd like to see mitigated in some capacity. I think we're talking about using the foliage as some sort of a screening. That's one comment that I think you've heard. Mm-hmm. I think you're working towards that. But the height of the buildings is something, if I were a resident in that community, I would have a hard time overlooking that, to use that terminology at this point. I'm not sure it's appropriate, but to be overlooking, I couldn't do that. So I think there are ways to progress in a smart and responsible fashion. The residents have spoken about density. Maybe there's a little bit more work to be done on your part, but I do appreciate the work that you've done and the group has done to bring us to this point here tonight. Because although in the residents' eyes it wasn't at all what they'd like to see, it's still a step in the right direction. So thank you very much, sir.
Councillor Tom, last word to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wasn't actually going to ask any questions, but since growth targets seem to come up quite a bit, I was in the washroom, actually. I apologize, but when Councillor Marakis was asking his first question, but Councillor Kim kind of informed me about what it was. So if I may ask for you, Mr. Mayor, the purpose for changing the zoning is to allow to build more units on the property. What's the main reason for you to do that?
Mr. Dugan?
You know, the developer's business is building, some of the best quality housing in Aurora, and he looks for opportunities. And this property came on the market, and it's a beautiful property.
It's fabulous.
And it's a beautiful place to build, some very, very nice homes. So, put those together, and you've got to check it out.
For sure, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would imagine that making money is one of the primary concerns, and that the primary concern for changing the zoning is not to help the town achieve its growth targets. That would seem to be a fairly altruistic motive for someone, and a bit unnecessary when you consider that you were going to make some money, right?
We actually work together on that.
Really?
Yes. You don't initiate, the rezoning of new subdivisions, that sort of. You wait for the developer to do that. But you set the policy, you set the guidelines, and in many cases, you tell them, what the zoning is going to be. But, for the municipality to try to anticipate all of this new growth that the provincial plan is telling us about is
all right.
That's huge.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
I was going to say, Mr. Mayor, that dog just ain't going to hunt. That's not why they bought the property.
Thank you. All right, I will close the public portion of the meeting. Thank you very much for all the comments and questions. Would someone please put the proposal, the recommendation, on the floor? Well, we need to discuss something. Thank you, Councillor Perry. Second, please. Councillor Thompson, thank you. Comments or questions on the proposal? Councillor Thompson, Councillor Perry.
I guess I'll start off. Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, we've heard numerous comments with regards to the growth plan. It's always been my understanding that we are well positioned against the population targets we've set. I've not in my 5 years on council seen anything contrary to those targets. In fact, we seem to be moving at a rapid rate. We all know what land prices are like. We keep seeing things about Aurora being one of the desired places to live. And so, to the best of your knowledge, are we on or above target when it comes to those population?
Mr. Mill?
To you, Mr. Mayor. As we speak, our population is approximately 57,000, and our 2016 target was, as identified in our official plan, was just under 64,000. We've had the last couple of years have been relatively slow, but as council, is aware that this year and in the coming couple of years, we'll see a peak in the number of homes being built, primarily within our 2C planning area.
Councillor?
Just to confirm, are you certain that the 2016 number was 64,000 and wasn't 58,000?
So you, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the chart here. 2016, we've got a projection of target of 63,700. 2016.
So between 2016 and 2031, those 15 years, we're only projecting 7,000 more residents? Because we said we would top out at 72 in 2031, or 71. Correct?
Yes. When the forecasts were identified in 2010, that was the 5-year incremental growth predicted at that point.
I think my point is, from my own personal observations, based on what we've seen and heard, I think we'll have no trouble reaching the target in 2031 of 72,000 people in Aurora. My second question through to you, to Mr. Ramuno, is while I see before us a proposed zoning bylaw amendment, I didn't see any requests for exceptions. And so I was just wondering, though, about the height of the proposal. It's my understanding that in stable neighborhoods there is a height limit of 9 meters, but when I looked at the drawings that were before us, they seemed to indicate that the total height was about 32 or 33 feet, which would seem to exceed that 9-meter height restriction. So can you clarify whether or not you are foreseeing any requests for exemptions from the zoning bylaw for height or any other matters?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, we haven't. I don't believe the zoning bylaw. Let me refer to Jeff. I don't have the draft zoning bylaw in front of me. Having said that, I think that we had a discussion with the applicant. He is aware of our official plan requirement of 3-story or 9-meter heights.
Mr. Healy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to refer to when it comes to the definition of height within the zoning bylaw, the height is interpreted as from the average finished grade to the midpoint of the roof. So therefore, when you look at that chart or the elevations looking at the building, even though the height of the building shows a full height of 10 meters, given the definition of height through the midpoint of the roof would be about 9 meters.
Thank you for that clarification. And then really my last question is, we've heard a number of concerns about, I guess, the lack of a buffer between the proposed homes and the existing homeowners. Is there anything that can be done through a site plan control to increase that buffer, to ensure that if the development were to go ahead, that the residents would have the privacy that they currently enjoy?
Mr. Muno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can certainly have that discussion with the applicant about increasing those buffers.
Councillor?
Thank you. And then just really a comment. I certainly agree with the residents who have come forward. They've done their homework. While I'm appreciative of anyone who is looking to build in Aurora, I think that it is essential that, especially when coming into a stable neighborhood, that you look to be compatible with the existing design. And when you look at our official plan, and there's been much discussed already, it certainly talks about being a fundamental principle in the plan that it seeks to ensure that the stability and vibrancy of the existing neighborhoods is protected from the negative impacts of potential incompatible development and growth pressures. And it states that any infill that occurs must fit in and respect established community character. And we've heard about the importance of coexisting, that it doesn't cause any undue impact. And when I look at the density, and I ask the proponent, and it's 7.5 units per acre. When I look at the surrounding areas, there's nowhere close to that. I certainly don't have any calculations, but I would estimate it's 2 to 3 units per acre at most. And so I think that it is a concern that the proposed development is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and that it will cause some undue impact to everybody. And we've heard that over and over. And I think, for me, that's the primary concern. I don't think there's a driver that we need to have infill in there through the growth plan, as we stated. And I think that bringing this forward will change the character of that neighborhood. And so I'm not supportive of it. And the recommendation calls for it to go to a future general committee meeting, which is a little concerning to me, because even in the report that we have, it states quite clearly that it really is all about compatibility. On page 3 of the report, it just says straight up that new development within this designation shall be compatible with its surrounding context, and goes on to talk about the fact that staff will then evaluate that and bring that forward at a future staff report. I think that question should be answered now before it goes any further. And to me, based on the information that I have, I don't see it as compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, and so I'm not supportive of it moving forward.
I have Councillor Perry Maracas-Nabel. Can you talk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Amuno. What's the official plan for this Wellington West sector? Can we talk about what we as a municipality are looking to achieve and what we've agreed that we'll be achieving in future?
Mr. Moot.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, the designation, as we've heard, for the majority of these lands are stable neighborhood residential. That's a current designation within the official plan. And as you know, we do have our promenade intensification secondary plan that really includes the Yonge Street corridor and the Wellington Street corridor, but the Wellington Street corridor east and just slightly west of Yonge Street over to Mill Street.
Councillor?
Thank you. And we've spoken a little bit about the growth numbers that we've been reaching, between 450 and 500 for the last few years of residential builds within the municipality. How sustainable is that? And I recognize that it's a function of that there is land that is able to be developed on the east end of town. How many more years, in your opinion, based on what we've approved and based on what there is to move forward, how many more years of that can we anticipate?
Mr. Cristobal, Mr. Moon.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and it goes to Councillor Thompson's question earlier regarding, I guess, the pace of growth. I think I've mentioned to Council, I think based on the growth we're experiencing in 2C, we expect that to be built out probably within 3 to 5 years. And again, based on our estimates, we're on track to achieve our population target of about 70,000, which is projected out to 2031. A lot sooner than that, probably early 2020, 21, 22.
Councillor?
I think that was an answer I was looking to hear a little bit earlier. And I agree with Councillor Thompson that we shouldn't be sending this to a general committee meeting. I wanted to put it on the table for discussion. I think it makes sense for it to come back to a public planning meeting. I think everybody around the table would probably agree with that. If we send it back to another public planning meeting, Mr. Ramuno, there are statutory timelines. Are we in danger of not making any of those statutory timelines if we do move it to a public planning as opposed to a general committee or council meeting?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, and that's always an option in our public planning reports is council can direct us to bring it back to another public planning meeting. And again, we've fulfilled our statutory requirements with the first public meeting in February. We brought it back as per direction from council back in February and in response to the applicant's revised plan that's before us this evening. But council could certainly, I'm in council's hands, but that is one of the options identified in the report as to if council chooses to bring it back to another public meeting.
So maybe I'm wrong, I thought we had 6 months before something can be appealed at the OMB. So that's the question I was looking for.
To you, Mr. Mayor, my apologies. Yes, I mean, this application came in early 2015, and it's a rezoning application. The Planning Act stipulates timelines for rezoning are 4 months. I mean, that has passed, but it appears that the applicant is still willing to work with the community and staff. But yeah, the application came in January of 2015.
Councillor?
Having made the motion to put it to a general committee meeting, I would make a motion to move it to a public planning meeting.
I will come back to you. I do have a list of speakers, so I will come back to you, if I may.
I think it's likely a friendly amendment, but whether we do it now or later, it's the same to me.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Akasabo, Kim Tom. Well, I was just going to let people who are already my speakers speak.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, on page 4, it states that under the reports and studies that the owner has not submitted any revised reports and that those would be coming back. So I'm just wondering, I guess it's not really a question, it's more a comment. I'm a little bit concerned that we don't have those in front of us tonight. So, I mean, to go to Councillor Perry's comment, I'd prefer to see this at a public planning meeting and get those reports. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Ramuno, the province has asked us with their Places to Grow Act to take in a certain amount of residents. As a municipality, have we not identified those areas where we're looking to intensify as far as the Aurora Promenade and the 2C areas?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we have, and you're correct, and I think Councillor Thompson alluded to this as well. I mean, a province sets out targets and sort of growth management policies, community building policies. It's up to the local municipality to decide where to grow. And again, you're correct. Our official plan identifies this area as stable neighborhood. Currently, our Promenade area, again, covers the Yonge Street corridor and the Wellington Street corridor east of Yonge, primarily.
So, thank you. Follow up through you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Ramuno. So this specific area is not one that we've identified as an area for intensification?
Is this not within the built area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when I refer to the Promenade, it's not our sort of intensification area with respect to achieving the provincial, targets where we've honed in on the Promenade area. However, it is within our built area, and as per the provincial and regional policies and our own policies in our official plan, as I mentioned, the official plan did recognize some of these established areas, subject to the proper review and zoning bylaw amendments, could develop over time. Again, and any development is considered an intensification. Even the construction of one new dwelling under the provincial and regional definitions is considered you're intensifying a parcel of land.
Councillor.
Thank you. I guess just I'll make a couple of comments. I mean, like Councillor Thompson, I'm really not thrilled with the density. I mean, I'm looking at 7.5 per acre, and that just doesn't cut it for me. We set out, I've said this before, we set out, we write the policies on our official plan, we do all that work. What's the point of doing all this work and all this and spending all this time if we're not going to follow what we set as a municipality? So, with that being said, I can't support a development that has a density of this amount. And I understand, and with all due respect to the developer, I understand that they need to make some money. And, when I ask the question, why 15, and it's, well, they need to make money. So I understand that, but for me, I look at it as the developer should do that due diligence when they look to buy the property. And if they can't see that it's feasible to make money within our official plan and within our zoning requirements, I mean, we understand that, we will bend at times and we will make changes, and that's normal. But to make an extreme change going from 1 to 15, I think is not right. And I think it's not what we want our town to be. So therefore, with that being said, I will not be supporting it the way it is presented to us tonight.
Councillor Abel, Kim Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I could just ask quickly with Mr. Ramuno, we have projections, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have projections for growth for residential, and our general conversations, we can't confirm it, but on first blush it looks like we're on pace. What about employment? Is that part of the growth plan as dictated by the province and the region? Are they hand in hand? And if you obviously don't have the metrics for that, but the question is that part of the...
Mr. Miller.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. It is the growth plan identifies population and employment targets. So does our official plan. So our population target to 2031 is 70,200. Our employment target is 34,200. Essentially one job for every 2 residents.
Thank you. And so we are working on that. I mean, we have another item on that, and it seems we're having no issue with residential as we see the lineups and everything selling out. That's not the same going with our employment. So we're growing quite well, and we're moving very quickly. My feeling is, and this isn't a moraine as Mr. Ramuno had said, but it's settlement area, and the protection of the greenbelt has, and we've addressed this before, has now put all the intensification within urban boundaries, and there's a lot of pressure going forward. And the popular statement is as well, you know what, we've got to grow somewhere, so we're going to grow in your town and get ready. But we have an official plan, and the moraine is what we are, is what Aurora is. That's part of our brand. Is we sit in a very tight area, and we take big pride in our heritage and that branding of that. So it's about adverse development, and I've traveled, because I live on that part of Wellington, and I see those 15 lots and this is one of them, where our new house was built on the far west side. There's some renovation going on, and they're all single dwelling homes. And that's what is being invested in this area, except for this lot. So I see 1 or 2 homes in this being compatible. The presenter said that they'd reduced 32%, but I think in the eyes of myself, and I think I can speak for the residents, it's an increase of 1,500%. And that's key. I'm looking at our official plan here, Mr. Mayor, and I just lost it here, but it talks about, on point 8, protecting stable neighborhoods, development policies, new development and site alterations abutting existing residential development shall be sympathetic. And that is what we've heard a lot of spoken from the residents here, and it doesn't seem to be addressed. And the key thing here is being addressed. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm having a lot of problems buying in on this development, specifically because I commented at the last planning meeting to the developer, is there any way to take that into effect, putting the houses perpendicular to the ones that are there? And one of the residents said the setback, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Could the houses have not the front doors like everyone else's facing Wellington? It says all new townhouses, multi-unit buildings may only be permitted within stable neighborhood designation subject to achieving the following criteria. Respect the existing character of the surrounding neighborhood through compatibility and complementary building, siting, massing, height, and scale. So they have to look, shall we respect and reinforce the existing physical character and uses of the surrounding area, the streets and everything else along those lines. And this does not conform whatsoever. We're talking about a stable neighborhood, Mr. Mayor. We have asked, and I specifically asked, that it take on a much smaller scale. These big townhouses are going to tower over the adjacent homes that they're used to having and bought into big lots with homes on there. On the west side, and we haven't heard from that neighbor because I understand he's not as mobile as the ones that attended today. We're talking 10 meters to his house of a home that's going to be 33 feet. And then again on Mr. Bushy's side, it's 12 meters, so 36 feet. And then they're going to have also a grade of, he agreed on 2.5 meters, but I attended the site. I thought it was a bit higher than that. So it's going to be just towering right beside their homes. They won't be able to see the sun or they won't even be able to see the trees. So, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that it has addressed what the concerns are from the last one. It's a minimal reduction. It seems the houses are the same footprint. They're just a bit bigger, the units, but it's the same footprint as I see it. When we set minimum targets for our official growth plans, it doesn't mean it's open season on empty lots to go and mass huge townhouse complexes. So these are the reasons why I'm not going to support this. I've been to the neighborhood. This will impact that neighborhood tremendously. And all the things that we talk about protecting and enhancing are not even being considered. We have brought it up at the first meeting, and when we came back again, they were not addressed at all. They met with the residents. That's great. They're working with residents. That's fantastic. But I didn't hear one resident agree with this or anything close to this. So I appreciate that the developer has gone ahead and tried to do that, has reduced it, but the overall impact on this stable neighborhood is just going to be overwhelming. And again, Mr. Mayor, I will not support this.
Thank you, Councillor Abel. Councillor Kim, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe all my thoughts have already been voiced. I won't say anything more of that, but in my experience in council, anything that's brought forward to general committee is when most of the core issues have been dealt with, and it's just a matter of tinkering around the peripheral. And it's clear that there's still a lot of issues and core items to be discussed. So I cannot support moving this forward to general committee. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with Councillor Kim. Much of what I was going to say was already said, but I'm not in support of this either. Again, we're talking about compatibility. There's, as Councillor Abel mentioned, there's about 15 rural residential lots, all single residential, 15 units on a 2-acre buildable area, and then 2 more single residential. To me, that doesn't seem compatible even in the slightest. The last public meeting we had, we asked that, we mentioned that density was an issue, we mentioned that compatibility was an issue, reasonability, and as Councillor Abel just mentioned, the footprint of the proposal that we have in front of us tonight is almost identical to the one that we just sent back in February. The only difference being instead of townhouses, you have single-family dwellings, but I'll note that the single-family dwellings proposed are, I believe, a resident mentioned, about 4 feet separated from each other. Certainly not compatible with the other single-unit residential houses that are abutting the property, of which there are only, I think, 3 or 4. So right now, we have 3 or 4 properties abutting a large lot, and now they'll have about 7 houses abutting their property. Again, I don't see that as being compatible. And the last thing I'll say, because again, most of my comments have been made, the official plan talks about our growth targets, specifically where the growth and intensification should take place in our town. And it says that approximately, I'm looking at section 3.0, promoting responsible growth and management. And it says that approximately 34% of new residential growth, being approximately 4,470 persons, is to be accommodated through intensification. Residential intensification growth will be accommodated within the defined built boundary as follows. The Aurora Promenade shall accommodate approximately 4,120 new residents, and within stable neighborhoods, new residential development of approximately 350 persons is to be accommodated through new secondary suite units. That's 350 persons of growth over 16 years till 2031, according to our current official plan. And that's through secondary suite units, which is essentially putting a basement apartment onto your house and allowing for people to rent, none of which this is compatible with either. So when you take it as a whole, especially when it comes through the policy context of our official plan, it's not even close. And I mentioned, Councillor Marakis mentioned this as well, you know, there's a reason why the proponent wants to build 22 or 15. It's to maximize the investment on the property, and I get that. But part of making an investment is understanding the policy context. And like I said, I don't believe that, and I'm getting pretty tired of hearing this as a councillor, that people who come into our town to develop are helping us meet our development targets. That to me is baloney. And like I said, that dog don't hunt, because it's to maximize the profit. And I get that. I'm not against maximizing profits. It just has to fit within the policy framework of our town. And in my opinion, it doesn't in this scenario, so I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Tom. Councillor Perry, I will go back to you. You had talked about putting an amendment on the floor. I will just direct council to page 7. And on page 7, the alternates to the recommendation, one is that we can direct staff to report back to another public planning meeting to address any issues that have been raised here this evening, which is what you contemplated, Councillor Perry, or we can refuse the application outright with an explanation. So I will go back to you, sir, and see what you'd like to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to put item number 1, alternative number 1, on the table.
Well, what we have, Madam Clerk, could you help us here? That's an amendment, actually, isn't it? It's an amendment, Councillor Carey.
I'm happy to put it on the table.
Is there a second? Councillor Kim? So the amendment is to bring this back to a future public planning meeting. Comments or questions on Councillor Perry's amendment? Councillor Thompson.
Well, I understand the intent of wanting to bring it back to a public planning meeting. The issue that I have is that seemed to imply that we're on the right track, that we need to address a few little issues. And I bring the example of Timber Lane Ford. When that proponent was proposing it, we sent it back a few times, but they were making progress, and it seemed like it was feasible that a solution could be achieved that would satisfy both the residents as well as the developer's intent. I didn't get that sense tonight, listening to the comments around the table. It seemed to imply that council is looking for something that's substantially different than what's been proposed tonight. And so I'm a little concerned about, continuing the process forward and saying to the developer, okay, with some tweaks, come back. I don't think we're looking at some tweaks. The sense I got is that there would have to be a significant and substantive change for this to even seem to appease the concerns of council and of the residents. And so I'm not in favor of the amendment. I think that my preference is alternative 2, is to refuse the application as it stands now, because I don't see this public planning process resulting in a solution at this point in time. And that's my opinion.
Other speakers to Councillor Perry's amendment. Councillor Perry.
I would only state that from the comments heard around the table, I would agree with Councillor Thompson that there doesn't seem to be a willingness from members of council to expect anything less than what we've stated, and we don't think that the developer can get there as a whole. I hold the belief that you always have to be willing to work a little bit harder and to achieve something, and I think the developers heard very clearly that density is an issue, height's an issue, and I think we have to be willing to give them the opportunity to come back again and try and rectify those things. I can't give a count of how many units would be appropriate. I think we'd all have a varying understanding of what appropriate would be. To Councillor Abel's point, built form, we would all probably disagree on what the ideal built form would be. I think we're all clear that we'd like to see some things changed to different extents and certain extents, but we have to be willing to keep working, in my opinion. So I don't disagree with Councillor Thompson that from the comments heard around the table, option 2 probably would go forward, but I do think that we have to be willing to work. And I think the developers have to be willing to concede a little bit as well.
Councillor Abel. Did you have your hand up, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'm very much in favor of working with the developer. I think this council last term and this one has already indicated that they'll work with development. We have our staff and an official plan. In this case, we made comments I thought were quite clear and not much was resolved, in my opinion. And I don't want to waste everyone's time to have something similar come back again. I think the message is clear. It's something that's got to be completely different than what we see here. I don't know how to express it otherwise. I mean, I am willing to work, but through you, Mr. Mayor, if we did defeat this and not defer it, would the developer be out of time, pocket, if he went back to the drawing board and came back with something different or sold it to another developer? I mean, or is it advantageous to keep the file open? The application. Does he have to go through the whole application and pay fees and do it all over again if we do?
If we refuse the application?
Yes.
Mr. Ramuna, can you help us with that?
To you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, council's within its purview to refuse the application. I mean, if that happens, the owner does have, he has some options. He could appeal council's decision to the Ontario Municipal Board, or he could also come back with another offer to council with a revised plan for council's consideration. We've seen that in the past. Typically, the first option, appealing council's decision to the board, is what most developers may do in that situation. But they may also come back with another revised plan for council's consideration.
Councillor?
Well, as I said, I'm torn. I'll wait for other councillors to talk. I don't want to give the impression that we won't work with the developer. I think we've made ourselves clear. I thought we did last time.
To the amendment, Councillor Maracas. Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, I guess I didn't really get an answer from what Councillor Abel was asking. If we rejected this straight out and then the developer came back with a revised thing, would that cost them any extra money, or would it be the same as if we just said come back to a future public planning?
I guess, in essence, would there be an additional application fee?
Yeah, would there be additional fees?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no additional fees from our standpoint. Obviously, they would bear some costs to revise the plans. But again, just to be clear, their option may be to appeal a decision to the board, and then through that process approach council with a revised plan. But no additional planning application fees at this point.
Okay, are we clear?
We're clear.
Councillor Kim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was exactly that of what Councillor Maracas just asked, and given Mr. Ramuno's response, option A is not a feasible option in my eyes at this point. And so, that said, I'm still in support of Councillor Peary's amendment for option 1, and allow the builder to have one serious crack at it and go forward from there.
Thank you, Councillor Kim. If there's no more speakers to the amendment, Councillor Peary. Councillor
Towne. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ramuno, if we send this back, is it still possible that the applicant can appeal to the OMB without coming back?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they could at this point. 4 months has passed since the application was first submitted. They're within the rights to appeal the application to the board.
Councillor Tom.
Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. I guess my thought is that, yes, absolutely. We're always willing, and we've shown that over the years. But I think that if you go through this process and you refer to a future meeting, we have a responsibility, not just to the residents, but to the developer as well, to provide clear direction on how to move forward. And I didn't hear clear direction. I heard that the density is too much, but so we could very well be in a similar situation next time where the applicant proposes 10, 12 units. It's a reduction in density, but I don't sense that that would satisfy council either. And so I think that if it is the intent of council to continue working, then you need to provide clear direction to the developer on what would be a suitable proposition, and then they can make a determination whether or not, because there is going to be costs incurred to come back to a future public planning meeting, working with their architects and their designers and plans and so forth. It's I think we need to be fair to the developer and say, okay, if you want to develop this property, here's clear direction on what someone as a councillor may view as acceptable or compatible. And I did not hear that around the table. I just heard that density was the issue, and I don't think that provides them with a clear direction. And I honestly believe that should it come back to a future planning meeting, I'm not certain that it will be suitable again. And so I'm just trying to be fair to the developer and say, based on the comments I've heard and in my own opinion, I don't think that there's going to be a solution that's going to pass at a future public planning meeting. So that's why I'm more in favor of rejecting it as it stands now.
Calling the vote on Councillor Perry's amendment, which is to defer this to a future public planning meeting. All in favor of Councillor Perry's amendment? Contrary? The amendment fails.
Recorded vote.
This vote is for the amendment to defer to a future public planning meeting. Councillor Maracas?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
Councillor Kim?
Yes.
Mayor Daw?
Yes.
Councillor Tom?
No.
Councillor Abel?
No.
Councillor Peary?
Yes.
The amendment fails with 3 in favor, 4 opposed.
Any others?
I'll move alternative number 2, which is to refuse.
Madam Clerk, is that amendment or is that we? Yeah, well, I'm just wondering, voting on the main motion, if we defeat the main motion, it effectively is alternate 2, is it not, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, I need to put forward an example.
That's what I was going to say. That has to be a reason.
I'm sorry? Yeah, okay. Then calling the vote on the main motion, please. All in favor? Contrary? All in favor, please. Of the main motion.
Can you clarify that?
All in favor of the main motion. As on the screen. All in favor, hands high.
To go to general committee.
To go to GC. Yeah, that's the motion.
That's what it says.
I'll make it easy. Recorded vote.
Okay, let's understand what we're voting on. We're voting on the motion which is on the screen to go to a future GC.
Voting on the motion that is on the screen. Councillor Kim?
No.
Councillor Thompson?
No.
Councillor Abel?
No.
Councillor Tom?
No.
Councillor Maracas?
No.
Councillor Peary?
Yes.
Mayor Daw?
Nope.
Main motion fails.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now put alternate 2, pardon me, which is, and how would we do that? Mr. Moon, can you help us with that, or Madam Clerk, when you're not busy picking up in the paperwork?
You would need to put the motion on the floor and also advise on why you're refusing the application.
Okay, would someone care to put that on the floor, please? Councillor Thompson?
The reason for refusal is compatibility.
Okay, second. Councillor Maracas? Comments or questions? Councillor Perry?
Without getting into too much, Mr. Amuno, I don't want to ask if it's a good or a bad reason. I don't want to draw you into the debate in that capacity, but should we be more specific when we talk about compatibility and mentions, or is that specific enough?
Mr. Mino?
So you, Mr. Mayor, that's sufficient enough.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor.
Just a quick question along those same lines. Can it be expanded to include the comments heard at the meeting? And so that way it expands the scope of which, because there was a number of comments. It's not just compatibility, but is that also acceptable?
Mr. Mino?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, you can, or you could actually even elaborate based on what you've heard and from the community.
Sure.
Councillor Abel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to be perfectly clear that in its official plan, Section 8, protecting stable neighborhoods, development policies, all new townhouses, multi-unit buildings. That's critical in my mind.
Councillor Towle?
I'd also like to add, thank you, Mr. Mayor, to what Councillor Abel said and include our growth, not our targets, but the areas of growth in our official plan that the town of Aurora has set up. Section 3, I think, E, subsection I, again, pointing to the intensification targets within the Aurora Promenade and stable neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Moon, do you have all that? Yes. Madam Clerk, are we procedurally okay? Thank you. In that case, calling the vote. All in favor, please. Contrary?
Recorded vote. It was asked by a resident?
When it went to a council meeting.
Okay, the recorded vote is on, we're voting on the refusal, citing compatibility, as well as specific sections within the official plan, and including residents' concerns. Councillor Kim. Mayor Daw.
Yes.
Councillor Abel.
This is the amendment, right?
No, this is voting
This
to
is alternate.
refuse.
Voting to refuse.
So I'm in favor of refusing. Yes.
Councillor Peary.
No.
Councillor Maracas.
Yes.
Councillor Tom.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
Yes.
The motion.
Sorry, Madam Clerk, I don't think I quite understood the question when I voted. Can you repeat what I just voted on?
You are voting, the motion is that the application be refused, citing compatibility, residents' concerns, and specific section of the official plan. So voting in favor would mean that you agree with the refusal. Voting against would mean that you do not agree with the refusal.
So if I'm in a proponent of the public planning meeting, I'd be voting no in this case. Is that correct?
You can't ask the clerk that.
Who can I ask? Because it's still not clear to me what this is
We're
voting
voting.
for.
The vote is to refuse the application with reasons. That's what the vote is.
Okay. No.
Madam Clerk?
The motion carries on a vote of 5 and 4, 5 in favor, 2 against.
So the application is refused.
Sorry, can I ask, Claire, who was the second person who voted against it?
I think Councillor Kim wanted to change his vote. Can he change his vote in a recorded vote?
Just.
Yeah, you're right. I can't.
Can you just clarify who was the second member of council that voted? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That finishes that item. We'll move to item 2. We'll just wait 30 seconds unless, of course, everybody would like to stay. You're more than welcome to. As you've seen, it's riveting. Item 2 is on the floor. Item 2 is proposed zoning bylaw amendment, Lesswell Investments, Inc., 1452 Wellington Street East. Mr. Muno, please.
Yes, to you, Mr. Mayor. Lawrence Cook, our planner, will provide an overview of this rezoning application for the property on Wellington Street, and then I do see representatives of the owner here as well that may wish to present. Lawrence?
Okay. Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The application at hand is a zoning amendment application on 1452 Wellington Street, file number ZBA 2015-04. The applicant is proposing to rezone the lands from a rural general to service commercial exception zone. The rezoning would permit 2 commercial buildings with appropriate exceptions to development standards. The commercial uses proposed are a multi-tenant commercial building with a daycare facility and a standalone restaurant building. The location map here shows the subject property in the dotted line. As you can see, there's a single detached dwelling on the lot currently. It's just north of Wellington at the northwest corner of Leslie and Wellington Street East. There is a number of provincial policy as well as regional policy and even the municipal policies that will be reviewed against this application at hand. There's a list of them on the slide here that I won't go through. However, it's to point out the official plan designation here is community commercial, which allows for the retail and service commercial uses. Such, there is no official plan amendment brought forward to you tonight. The subject site is currently zoned community commercial. The area has a designation of community commercial to the north, to the east, to the west. South of Wellington Street East is Business Park within the official plan amendment number 30. The zoning bylaw currently is rural general zone. The existing zoning reflects the existing low-density residential use on the subject lands. Once again, the applicant has applied to change it to a service commercial use. The list of exceptions are noted in the staff report. Please note that the applicant has submitted a site plan amendment application. However, a separate report will be reviewed in a future council meeting. Just to show you the proposed zoning and how it reflects the area here, the property to the east is service commercial C3. It's just the same zoning as was northeast corner of Leslie and Wellington and southeast corner of Leslie and Wellington. The zoning to the south is rural general, as well as the zoning to the west and north of the site. Here are some conceptual site plan I'd like to show council here what the applicant is proposing. As mentioned, there is a standalone restaurant building fronting on Wellington Street East, as well as a multi-tenant commercial building with a daycare facility on the second floor. Here is some elevation drawing that will show you what that restaurant may look like. As noted on the notes there, the top left-hand corner is the elevation which faces Wellington Street East. And the bottom right corner of this slide shows the facade that will be facing the existing residential property to the west. This slide here shows what the multi-tenant building will look like. The top photo here represents the elevation that is adjacent to the existing gas station, which is on the eastern property line. This slide here, the bottom photo here represents what you will see facing Wellington Street East. Here's a list of some of the first submission comments we have received and will continue to look into as the application progresses. Staff will continue to look at the compatibility and the appropriateness of this zoning amendment. We will review the Conservation Authority's approval on the grading and the stormwater management. Of course, the landscape design will also be looking towards on how it will emphasize the pedestrian movements. We have note that the regional approval towards the vehicular access will need to be reviewed. and of course the urban design and the site layout, which we'll talk about more at the site plan approval stage. We have received public comments to this application. Here are some that are summarized quickly, and I'll go through some of these. They have represented that they have concerns regarding the proposed width of the access driveway, concerns with the grade differences. The proposed uses will generate additional noise, odor, lighting, as well as they have issues with the use of the daycare nursery being located adjacent to a gas station. And they also have concerns/inquiries regarding the extension of the center median on Wellington Street East. In conclusion, staff will take a technical review of the subject application, and we'll discuss the comments that we receive at the public and meeting here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. Is there a representative of the proponent here?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Gord Mahoney, and I work for Michael Smith Planning Consultants, and I'm here on behalf of our client, Leswell Investment, Inc. Ownership group is over there. As Lawrence or Mr. Cook has identified, the application before you is for an amendment to the town zoning bylaw to establish a commercial plaza, and an application for site plan approval has been submitted to the town, but it's not under consideration this evening. We understand that this evening is an initial public meeting where the proposed development is presented to council and the public for comment. Once the comments have been received, we'll go back and review them and work to the best of our abilities with public and members of staff to address them. Given this, I will not reiterate all the information that Mr. Cook has provided council and the public regarding the development. However, I do have a small matter to raise. In the planning report, it does note that the proposal includes a right-in and right-out entrance. That's not quite correct. We're proposing a full move access out onto Wellington Road. We are currently working with the region on this matter. There are some issues with it, but we are providing them the information they've asked for. We also note that there's 5 comments from staff and 5 comments from the public listed in the planning report. Most of the comments are related to site plan approval or site design aspects of the development. And as the process moves forward through both zoning and site plan, I'm sure most of those or all of them can be worked out. With that ends my brief presentation. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, sir. I'll just open it up if there's any members of the public who would like to come forward and have any comments or questions on this particular application. If you could give us your name, your address, sir, and you have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of town staff, and interested parties. My name is Eric Liversidge, and my wife and I live at 1426 Wellington Street East, a location that's been our homestead since we built it in 1963. We have put together a list of concerns and recommendations, which, with your permission, I would like to present to you at this time. As I said, my wife and I are owners of the property at 1426 and 1414 Wellington Street East, and have our residence on the property at 1426 Wellington Street East. As such, the subject lands that are being proposed for development are immediately adjacent to our easterly property line. Having reviewed the proposed site plan, we would like to put forth the following concerns and suggestions for your consideration. As per documentation, and this was as current as last week, and I got some of this documentation from Lawrence. As per documentation from the York Region Community Planning and Development Services, access to the subject lands from Wellington Street East is to be restricted to right in, right out. To control this access, the proposal is to extend the concrete slab median 30 meters to the west of the proposed access to the subject lands. If this were done, it would then restrict access to our driveway to right in, right out. This is totally unacceptable from our standpoint and contravenes an agreement made with the region many years ago when Wellington Street was widened to 4 lanes, that full access from our property would be maintained as long as our property was zoned as rural residential. Should it be necessary for safety reasons to extend this median to the west, then it is our suggestion that it should be extended to the entrance of the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex and a cut be made in the median at the end of our driveway, similar to what is provided at the Fred Bowlesby Fire Hall to permit full access to Wellington Street. The proposed site plan shows the driveway located on the westerly edge of the subject lands. Would it not be more serviceable for access from Wellington Street to be centrally located and come up between the 2 proposed buildings? This would also negate a large change in the grading issue coming in off Wellington Street. We have a major concern about light pollution. Light shields should be provided for all parking lot lights to ensure all light is projected downward. Noise from the loading area for the restaurant is a concern. We would like to see a noise barrier constructed to mitigate this noise. In talking both light and noise pollution, our house is located 3 meters from our easterly property line. All of the bedrooms in our house are located on the east side of the house. So we are now looking at something that is going to be 3 meters plus away from all of our bedrooms. The location of the garbage bins should be relocated to the rear of the subject lands to reduce the odor and possible rodent infestation. Drainage from the subject lands has traditionally spilled over onto our property. Steps should be taken to ensure all drainage from the subject lands is contained on the subject lands. These are concerns that we have from an initial review of the proposed site plan. We reserve the right to voice any other concerns as this project moves on in the development process. And I have copies of this for you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ramuno, Glenn Lettman, and Lawrence.
You could just leave those with Samantha, and she will make sure that we get them. Thank you,
One
sir.
other thing from a housekeeping aspect, your location map shown as item 2, page 9. Looking at our 2 lots, which are the ones immediately to the west of the subject lands and to the east of the driveway into the Stronach Aurora Recreation Complex, it would appear from looking at it that the lot to the east, which is lot 2 of the subdivision plan, is larger than the lot to the west. Both of those lots are the exact same size as per our survey plan. Now, whether that's just something on the plan here, I don't know.
Thank you. We will make sure that we check our records.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak to this plan from the public? I'm sorry, sir, for the proponent, I missed your name. If you'd like to come up, do you have any comments with respect to either the full-service access at 1426 Wellington or any of the other issues that were raised with respect to noise, light pollution, et cetera?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mahoney.
Thank you.
With regard to driveway in the middle of the property, I believe it has been looked at. The issue starts to become truck turning within the site and getting a truck in for garbage pickup, snow plowing, so on and so forth. With the site plan application, a photometric plan has been submitted to the town. The photometric plan will show the lights, the candle watts that they'll produce, and as you move away from the lights, the limit or the end of where the light casting will be. Through the pre-consultation meeting process, a noise study wasn't required to be submitted. So we haven't addressed that or looked at that. And of course, stormwater management, as the previous applicant or proponent had said, there is a requirement to maintain all stormwater management or storm drainage within the site. Again, a stormwater management plan has been submitted to the town for review. We do have our first set of comments back from the engineering department, and we are going through those comments and trying to address them all. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ramuno, could you comment on some of the issues raised, especially the full access versus right in, right out?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're going to need to. We've heard some of the comments tonight, and we'll have a discussion with not only our engineers, but we'll have to take advice from York Regional staff because they control Wellington Street, and they'll be reviewing not only the rezoning application, but obviously the site plan in great detail with respect to the location of the access and the actual design of the access and any proposed extension of the median. So that's a comment that we'll certainly take back and seek advice from the region.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Any other, sir, do you have any more comments, please?
Yes, Eric Liversidge again. Further to the light pollution issue, the Esso station come Tim Hortons on the corner of Leslie and Wellington there, when they did their remodeling about 3 or 4 months ago, they took their lights from lights which hung down at the gas service bar and put in recessed lighting directed straight down. It has, I can no longer now read the paper in my bedroom without having the lights turned on. So it does make a difference, and that's why I'm saying that light shields should definitely be considered for an area like this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You made your point quite eloquently. If there's no more comments from the public, then I will. Any comments from council on this particular application at this point? Councillor Peary, Councillor Abel, Councillor Thompson.
Through you to the applicant, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mahoney?
I guess one of the difficulties in this situation is the area is zoned to be moving in this direction in the future, but we have some residents who I think rightfully at this point in time are enjoying their homes, have no intention of leaving their home. My question to you is we've got this in front of us. When are you anticipating moving forward with the build?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as soon as possible. Once the approvals, if it is approved through council, my client would be looking to build right away.
I would say there are some elements of this that I really like. The roof, as it currently stands where the daycare is, I think is phenomenal. Any opportunities we have to it's a unique solution, so I appreciate that. One question I did have about that roof, I know it's still early and things change. Are we looking at a green roof, or are we looking at some sort of an AstroTurf or play area on top? And if you can't speak to that, I understand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can't speak to that right now. I know it shows some play structures. I know it shows some trees, but I couldn't speak to whether those trees are potted or artificial. And I couldn't speak to the surface of the roof, although I wouldn't expect it to be tar and chip. It would be some type of, maybe it's green, or I'm trying to think, rubber, but I don't think it's been decided yet.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abel.
Thank you, and Mr. Mahoney, you did touch on almost everything with the lights, and I know you'll figure something out for the neighbor there. But you didn't allude to the garbage. Would that be moved back and loading and sort of things like that?
We can certainly look at the garbage location. It does become a function of being able to get a truck to the area. But we'll certainly go back and look at alternative locations for garbage.
Thank you.
It's something that works.
And my other question, Mr. Mayor, I think is to our director about the medium cut. And it would make sense that when they widened Wellington, they allowed the residents to access in and out as they always had. And so I'm hoping that that is going to be a very important consideration when this is all going through, whether it's right in, right out, full access, but let's not forget about the resident out of all this. Thank you.
Any other speakers come to this point? Sir? I'm going to ask you, Mr.
Just in response to Councillor's question relative to the daycare center and its location, the building in which the daycare center is proposed to go is immediately along the eastern boundary of that property. Is that not correct? If that's the case, less than 5 meters away from that, over the fence, are the storage tanks for the gasoline for the Esso service station. Large tanker fuel trucks pull up there and unload fuel into these storage tanks. There is a potential there for a very volatile situation, let alone fumes, whatever, coming from these gas tanks.
Okay, sir, thank you.
So, as well as the issue of these large tankers now come out and do U-turns around that median that's there and head back to 404. So,
okay, thank you, sir. Councillor Kim, Councillor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is to Mr. Mahoney, there's a restaurant and a patio facing, I believe, the east side. Do you know as yet whether the restaurant will be LCBO licensed? I'm assuming it will be LCBO licensed. And where I'm going with this is, I know there's other areas of the community where noise pollution is a concern for residents. I'm just wondering, on behalf of the resident, if there's going to be outdoor patios and maybe music or noise. I'm assuming the patio will be open in the summertime till sometime like 9, 10, late in the evening. Can you extrapolate in terms of
that?
Mr.
Mayor, there's no tenant yet for the restaurant, so it may be difficult to answer all those questions at this time. I would believe it would be safe to assume that it's going to be a restaurant with a licensed patio. But as far as music goes, live music, hours of operation, I can't speak to that at this time.
That's Councillor Kim. It's a good question. It perhaps might be more appropriate at site plan stage.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Maracus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the proponent. I'm just curious, looking at the diagram and just hearing what the resident mentioned, is there any thought that it would be possible to just flip it around and have daycare on the west side and the restaurant on the east side? Is that a possibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, is it a possibility? I guess it might. I don't think we've looked at it. I can tell you that the biggest prospective tenant that the client has is the daycare facility. They've had multiple daycare facilities come through, walk the property. 10? More than 10? Almost double that. Not one of them has mentioned the gas station as an issue. All of them know that the gas station's there. All of them know that the proposed daycare is to be second floor with an outdoor patio overlooking the gas station. If the daycare facilities, 10 plus, have all looked at it and haven't had a concern, I got to defer to them. They're the ones that know their operations, their policies to run it.
Thank you. And I guess, I'll wait till site plan because I just look at the foliage and stuff like that. So.
Councillor, any other comments for the proponent? Okay, so I'll close this portion of the meeting and I'll ask someone to put the recommendation on the floor. Thank you, Councillor Maracus. Second, Councillor Perry. Comments or questions on the Councillor Maracus?
Thank you, Chair. Overall, I guess my feeling is that we have a resident that has some concerns and there seems to be a willingness to kind of work together. So I'm not sure if I would want to see it come back to a general committee meeting. I might like to see it come back to public planning and have the developer sit down with the resident, probably go through those concerns and come to an agreement on those concerns and figure out a way to bring this forward with those concerns basically fixed. So, I mean, overall, I don't really have a big issue with this proposal. I like the fact that the daycare restaurants will be there close to the Stronach Center. You know, people drop off, they'll drop off their kids, they'll go either swimming or vice versa, or they'll go for a drink and leave their kids there. So, you know, I like the proposal. I just think it needs some tweaking, so I'm looking forward to see it when it comes back to us.
Councillor Perry, did you wish to speak?
I did, Mr. Mayor. I'm okay with the Nature General Committee. I think the proponents know that we expect them to continue working with the neighbors close by. I think it can probably be worked through. I did have a question for Mr. Amuno, but it did relate to the curb cuts. Not a huge issue, but something to work with. My personal preference, I think, would be a right in, right out. Makes things easier, but I'll let staff do their work.
Councillor Thompson, Councillor Tom.
Thank you, Mayor Don. And most of the concerns have already been stated. Just a couple, and really it just revolves around access in and out of the plaza itself. So as someone who drives that stretch on a daily basis, I can tell you that there are some challenges coming down Wellington Street with people turning into the Tim Hortons Plaza, the Esso Tim Hortons Plaza in front of it based on rate of speed and so forth. So a little concerned about another potential issue there. But also to draw some suggestions from the plaza next to St. Max where Nino Diversa is. It also has a daycare, and from some residents who I know use it on a regular basis. When that plaza was first established, there was only one stop sign, and that stop sign was right at the road, and so the sidewalk essentially didn't have a stop sign prior to it. And so cars would come up and pull right up to the road to that side, and they would cut off cyclists and people using the sidewalk. And it was an issue, especially so close to the school, and there were some problems there. We have another stretch here. It's next to our recreation facility. I know for a fact that many people use this stretch to go running, cycling, and so forth. And so, you know, I know that they resolved the issue at that plaza by putting a second stop sign. It's just in front of just before the sidewalk, and then again at the road. I'd looked at that plaza at some of the measures that they implemented to mitigate some of those issues, because I can see it being an issue here again. I am concerned about cars pulling in and out. I don't know if I'm a supporter of a full move access there, given the volume of people that go there and the traffic, but I'll wait to see it all come back. But again, my primary concerns are around access in and out of that plaza.
Councillor John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, we're approving tonight the zoning bylaw amendment to allow for the two structures, but a lot of these concerns can be addressed, as you mentioned, at the site plan portion.
Mr. Muno, could you either confirm or deny?
Yes.
Okay. Just because I think the resident has... Councillor Thompson?
We're not approving anything tonight.
No,
I think Councillor Tom's first words was they were approving. We're not approving anything. I want to be clear on that.
It's moving it forward in the process, and there'll be more opportunities for discussion around the suitability, is what my question was. Thank you for clarifying that.
Other comments? Any other comments or questions? Council, is your will that we bring this back to a future GC or to another public planning meeting? In that case, the motion's on the floor. All in favor? Contrary? That is carried, Madam Clerk. The last item
I'll put the motion on the floor.
Well, we'll go to Mr. Moon. We have a presentation first.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the next item is an official plan amendment application that we've initiated here. The Planning Department and Fausto Filippetto, our senior policy planner, will provide an explanation as to the the reasons behind the amendment. It's really to harmonize with our official plan, our 2C secondary plan policy within the business park designation with the regional official plan policy related to employment lands and the ancillary commercial uses. So I can ask Fausto to start his presentation.
Fausto, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. As Marco just mentioned, that what you have before you is a town-initiated official plan amendment affecting the ancillary uses policy in the Aurora 2C secondary plan business park. The reason for the proposed amendment is really to conform to the ancillary uses policy for employment areas in the York Region official plan, which has changed as a result of a board hearing or an Ontario Municipal Board hearing. Also to point out, there is a diagram or a figure of the location of the subject lands, the Aurora 2C Business Park. Currently, the way the policy reads is that no more than 20% of the employment within the Business Park 1 designation shall be allocated for ancillary uses, defined as small-scale retail and commercial uses that primarily serve the business functions in the business park. The proposed change to the policy is highlighted here in yellow and would change the policy to no more than 15% of the total employment area. So essentially what this does is changes the amount of permitted ancillary uses from 20 to 15%. And it changes the way we interpret the calculation of that from employment to employment area. The reason we're bringing this forward at this time is there are a few reasons, actually. One is out of statutory obligation. Under the Planning Act, lower-tier municipalities official plans must conform to the upper-tier municipal official plan. Consistency. Staff believe that operationally it is important to have a consistent approach in applying land use planning policy with the region. And also implementation. For ease of implementation as well as precision, it's easier to implement the ancillary uses policy calculated as a percentage of land area rather than a percentage of employment. The proposed official plan amendment was circulated to the region of York. They've had an opportunity to review it, and we have received from them a letter of support. And also in that same letter of support, they've identified to us that they have exempted the proposed official plan amendment from regional approval. With respect to existing applications and approvals, existing approvals will remain in effect. Furthermore, existing applications will be dealt with under the current policy. So as Council is aware, last year there was an approval for the Emery investment site. That approval included both a zoning bylaw amendment as well as a draft plan of subdivision. This site is a large site, takes up a large portion of the Aurora 2C secondary plan business park, and is located immediately north of the 2B business park. So the approvals that were granted under that zoning bylaw will remain in effect if there is a change in policy. Furthermore, with any existing applications, the Planning Act requires that applications be analyzed and dealt with under the the official plan of the day. So again, any existing application will be dealt with under the current policy regime. In conclusion, therefore, what we're recommending at this time is that staff be directed to schedule the draft official plan amendment for an upcoming general committee meeting, subject to the resolution of any issues brought forward here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Fausto. Any members of the public wish to speak to this with respect to the OPA?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, my name is Bob Hodgson of the firm of W.R. Hodgson and Associates. My client is 721312 Ontario Inc. That's 721312 Ontario Inc. And the address is 1675 St. John's Side Road East. The owner, 721312 Ontario Inc., has approximately 100 acres of land within the 2C area, secondary plan area, OPA 73, being part of Lot 25, Concession 3. As was previously mentioned, OP Amendment number 73 was adopted by the town of Aurora September the 28th, 2010, and the Region of New York February the 9th, 2011, after a lengthy OMB hearing, which my client was part of, as well was the town of Aurora and the Region of New York. The town of Aurora has recently considered Addison Hill Business Park, and the town of Aurora on June the 25th, 2014, and subsequently approved the land based on OPA 73 as presently written. And that is a large piece of land of all the land that you're considering under this amendment. As was previously pointed out, is that the present OP is 20% for ancillary uses of the total employment. Is to change to 15% of the total employment area, which makes a considerable difference with regards to the amount of various uses my client can put on his property as compared to the property just immediately to the south of him, being Addison Hill Business Park. Apparently, as we understand it from town planning staff, this change is to conform to the policy within the Region of York OP. But apparently, the Region OP is not that definitive on what they are trying to achieve. I have not reviewed the Region OP, but this is what I've learned from Aurora staff. We object to the change. The region had an opportunity to bring this forward at the OMB hearing. And we believe that we should be treated on our lands just as Addison Hill is being treated today. We do not feel that what was just stated, that the land use policy is to be compatible. Well, if we are immediately to the north of Addison Hill, and they have one land use being 20% ancillary uses, and we're down to 15%, it goes from employment persons to employment lands. That doesn't seem compatible to me. And as I heard before with regards to the discussion on residential property, compatibility is a big thing. And we believe we should be treated the same way. We believe all the land should be on the same level playing field, that one land is not more competitive than the other, and therefore we are objecting to the town of Aurora's proposed official plan amendment. The Region of York cannot be Johnny-come-lately to request changes to the town of Aurora OP 73 when they had all the opportunity in the world to bring this forward at the OMB hearing. We appreciate council listening to our objection. We think it's a valid objection, and we would request that you not go any further with this proposed amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other members of the public? In that case, I will turn it over to council. Comments from council, please, with respect to the presentation.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the applicant, or sorry, not the applicant. We're the applicant.
We're the applicant. Okay,
It's not. Sorry, it's not the same process, is it?
No,
we can't respond.
No.
Through you to Mr. Ramuno. Mr. Ramuno, sorry, it feels like a long night. Through you, Mr. Mayor, what does the regional plan state in terms of ancillary uses?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the regional plan identifies 15% of an employment area can be devoted to ancillary uses. And so we've initiated the amendment. The region didn't, initiate it. We've moved this forward to harmonize it with the regional plan.
Councillor.
So to clarify, the regional plan does say that it's 15%. We are falling in line with what the regional plan says that we should be doing. What happens, through you, Mr. Mayor, let's say we didn't make this change and an application came forward that conformed with our old OP, and it does not conform with the regional OP, who takes precedence?
Mr. Ramuno.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our official plan policy.
Our official plan does?
Our official plan policy.
Seeing that at this point in time we're trying to fall in line with what the regional policy is, it makes sense to me that we would have policies that align with one another. I'm more than happy to keep moving forward on this.
Councillor Zabel, Thompson, Rackus.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'm very sympathetic with the Emery Park, and we've been moving and trying to attract development. I'm at a loss of what the region is trying to do. I understand that they may have lost a hearing, but I think there should be some sort of grandfathering in, and that
with respect, Emery is grandfathered in.
So the objection from is Emery at 20%? Will remain at 20?
Mr. Ramuno.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Council, I'm sorry I didn't mention it earlier. Council has received a letter from Emery Investments. I've had discussions with them. As you're aware, Council approved the subdivision and the zoning bylaw to permit 20% ancillary uses on that plan. That zoning's in effect, and as we've heard Mr. Filippetto mention, that if we were to move forward with this change to our official plan to 15%, it would not affect the existing approvals for the Emery plan at 20%.
And I thank you very much for that clarification, because I was so then the lands north have not put in any, they're not as far along in the zoning and application. Mr. Middle?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, if I can just take the opportunity and refer Council to Figure 1, which is Item 3, page 5.
Oh, that's a tough one.
So this proposed official plan amendment to the business park policies really only applies to the 2C secondary plan area, and it really just covers those areas shaded, highlighted as the subject lands. The large parcel, which is the Emery parcel, as we mentioned, Council's already approved the subdivision and zoning in place, so this policy change would not apply to those lands. We have 3 other property owners within the 2C business park. Mr. Hodgson, who just spoke, is representing the owner who owns the balance of the lands north of Wesley Creek, those lands south of St. John's Side Road. They have not submitted an application to date. We just, recently, a few weeks ago, did receive an application from the property owner, one of the 2 property owners north of St. John's, at the northeast corner of Leslie and St. John. We do have a draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw application similar to the Emery Business Park, proposing a mix of retail, business, and office uses. We have a complete application from them. They would be governed by the existing 2C secondary plan, being the 20% provision. The other land holding within the 2C secondary plan is just east of that, over by the 4-4 corridor, and we have not received an application for business park uses from that landowner. So we have 4 property owners. 2 applications have been received. Council approved 1, and the other 2 property owners, we have not received any planning applications.
Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Ramoon. I appreciate that. Were the other 2 notified of the pending ruling? Would it not have been within their camp to be cognizant of what was going on at the region? And this would also be going through every municipality throughout the region?
Mr. Moon?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we have, as part of this official plan amendment, have sent out individual notices to the 4 property owners. We've only heard from the 3 and not the 4th, the property owner by the 4-4 corridor. We are, I'm not aware of any other municipality who is currently initiating an official plan amendment to harmonize with the region. And again, every municipality has a different sort of policy framework with respect to their employment area and business park. But the region's policy of the 15% was a result of a board hearing and a settlement that they reached 2 or 3 years ago, I believe.
Councillor?
Well, I mean, my thought is having heard all that, and I'm sorry I didn't talk to you before, I would like to defer this and allow other municipalities to catch up, and the opportunity for the person here that came by and spoke, I would afford him that opportunity to move something quickly or speak to it. I mean, why would we be the first one to put this through, and that makes us look that much more difficult in comparison to the other municipalities who seem to, it would be advantageous for some of the developers in the other municipalities.
We're getting a bit, there's probably a better discussion for when we put the proposal on the floor. So
Thank you very much.
Specifically to either
all right,
the presentation, Councillor Perry. Councillor Johnson.
So speaking to the presentation, one of the slides said the reason why was because we had a statutory obligation. And I hear Mr. Ramuno talking about harmonizing. So I guess I want clarity with regards to the slide that was in our presentation. So is it really an intent to harmonize, or do we have that statutory obligation that the lower tiers must agree with the upper tier? So perhaps we could put that slide back on the screen. That one, thank you. So the first one talks about that statutory obligation. So is it the intent to harmonize, or do we actually have that obligation that we must conform, as it says there?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to clarify, the intent here, I mean, we initiated it, is to harmonize it. I will certainly report back to council. I've had discussions with the region because the regions changed from their original 20% provision, similar to our 2C, from their plan back in 2010. The change resulted in a OMB hearing that the region had regarding their employment protection policies in general. And I will confirm with council, I don't believe the region is making this is obligating us to make this change. But staff and I feel it's appropriate to be consistent with the regional plan, because it is an easier way to monitor and enforce the amount of commercial ancillary commercial uses versus the employment uses within these business park areas.
Thank you. And I understand the desire to be consistent and to harmonize. To me, that is different than having a statutory obligation to comply. And so I just wanted to be clear on that, because one says, I get the intent, makes a good idea. The other one says, you got no choice. So appreciate that clarification. I'll save the rest for the remainder of the session.
All right, then to the presentation. Otherwise, we can just put the Samantha 1. Can you put the proposal back up on the screen? Thank you. So if someone would just move that, we can just move to discussing that, I think. Councillor Perry, Councillor Kim, you seconding that? Well, we're just putting this on the floor now to have the discussion with respect to this. Second? Okay, so I've got Councillor Perry, Councillor Kim, and Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to Mr. Ramuno. Could you define ancillary uses?
Mr. Ramuno.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, through you, I don't have the definition in front of me, but they are really, the ancillary uses are considered those type of retail commercial uses that are there to serve the employment area in general.
So to clarify, we're dropping from 15, or we're dropping, if this moves forward, we're dropping from 20% to 15% uses like fast food chains. Could you give me some other?
I think, to be clear, Councillor, we're going from 20% of what would be the proposed employment in an area.
No, that's, I understand completely.
15% of the area. So it's.
But again, could I get some more things that are allowed as ancillary uses? I've understood them to be fast food chains.
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, our 2C secondary plan identifies the commercial uses, and it's a broad range. It permits standalone restaurants, retail stores, a variety of retail commercial uses.
For me, if we're dropping from 20 to 15 in our employment lands, those are the. I understand that we have to have some ancillary uses. It makes sense to have them for all of the people who come to work in those areas. It makes sense to me. But if we're moving in a direction to limit those, it's 100% something I'm in favor of, because, you know, we've heard it around the council table before that those aren't high-paying jobs. They're definitely needed, but these are our employment lands we're talking about, right on the 404 corridor. And I'd like to maximize as much as possible the amount of high-quality paying jobs. I understand that different applications have applied under different sets of rules. I think it makes sense, though. We're moving forward with this process. The process benefits Aurora. It benefits the community, I believe, as a whole. I think it's something that we need to implement now. And, you know, if certain applicants weren't able to come in on time, I don't think that should halt the direction that Aurora should be moving in.
Councillor Kim.
Along the lines of Councillor Perry, I just wanted to bring some clarity to this what's on the table here. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ramuno, has there been any previous studies in terms of what the downstream impacts are from changing from 20% employment to 15% employment area? Has this been done, like any kind of comparisons in terms of what the repercussions or the cost benefits are to various stakeholders?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I don't believe there has been any detailed study. I mean, the region and the town, when we first came up with the 20%, it was part of our OP process and our secondary plan process. So I don't think there's been any, significant detailed study. But again, it's really just, we're not dealing with proposing to change the type of uses. It's just that numerical value of 20 to 15% currently, as we've heard, it's 20% of the employment, which really translates into a number of jobs or the amount of gross floor area. I think the region has realized, and that's why they proposed that they have made the change, and it was approved by the board, is 15% of the land area is a lot easier for staff in dealing with these proponents to deal with. It's basically devoting 15% of that employment area for those type of retail uses, and the balance, the 85%, is for the higher quality employment type jobs and offices.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is that in terms of the York region, they've undergone to make this decision, this change, without thinking about the repercussions of the methodological change.
Is that a word?
Or is that a word? So let me say that again. So they've made this decision with regards to the change in methodology without thinking about the repercussions of the change. They've simply made this decision because it's more simple to administer.
Mr. Miller?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yeah, it is it's more practical to implement, but again, the intent of the regional employment protection policies, as our 2C employment protection policies, really are to protect those strategic employment lands along the 400 or 404 corridor, but however to be flexible to permit some of those what we call ancillary, small scale retail commercial uses within the employment areas. So frankly, I don't really think, in my opinion, there is a significant impact to our commercial operations or our ability to attract commercial uses with this proposed change from the 20 to 15%. The real intent here is to ensure that we do achieve the number of employment jobs within these areas.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Daw. If we move ahead with the amendment, through you to Mr. Ramuno, if we move ahead with the amendment and it is 15%, does that prohibit somebody from coming forward with a plan and asking for, I guess, an amendment and allow the 20%, even though it doesn't conform?
Mr. Ramuno?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The region, if we make the change, I think the region would see that as a conversion request to, convert some employment lands to, more retail type uses. But again, just maybe to clarify one thing that I don't think we've mentioned is the way the policy is set up currently, based on the 20%, we're currently allowing up to 20% of the entire secondary plan employment area to be devoted to small scale retail. So dealing with, these 4 landowners, if one proponent comes forward with, less than 20%, that could be taken up by another property owner within that same secondary plan area. So as we saw currently with our Emery investments, I believe they maxed out to approximately 20%, perhaps slightly below that. The next application that comes forward, they may come to 20%, but if they are below that 20%, the balance of the employment area could take up that additional capacity of ancillary uses.
Thank you. I think there was some discussion on this end of the table that perhaps what also would be helpful is to have better understanding of what other municipalities doing, within York region, is it 20% is on average what everybody else is doing? Is it 15%? Having some statistics for the support when it comes to GC. Thank you.
Before I get to Councillor Maracas, I skipped over Councillor Abel because he did have his hand up. I dismissed him.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Ramuno, you said you had sent out notices to the 4 applicants. Can you tell council when you sent those out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they were sent out within that 20-day window, 20 days prior to this meeting. We also placed notices in both local papers, so we did send those out, I believe, late August or early September.
And again, I asked in the previous, we are the first municipality to conform with the region? Mr. Mayor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe so, but I've made a note. We'll definitely report back on the status of some of the other local municipality official plans with respect to the related policy.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Maracas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of like Councillor Perry. I really don't have an issue with going forward with this. There is a few things I would like to see when it comes before us at General Committee. Like Councillor Thompson mentioned, is the other municipalities within New York Region, the numbers. I just did a quick look, and I'm noticing that Markham is at 15%. So, I mean, I'd like to see those numbers, and I'm assuming if we see those numbers and a majority of them are already conforming to it, I really don't have a problem with moving forward.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Calling the vote then. No, sir, it's closed. If there's no other comments or questions from council, all in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Sir, this is going forward to a general committee meeting. That's all we've done tonight, is move it forward to a general committee meeting. That is it. May I please have confirming bylaw? Councillor Abel, thank you. Councillor Tom, all in favor? Contrary? That is carried. Motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Abel, Councillor Perry, all in favor? Contrary? That is carried.